Special meeting for February 11, 2025 to order. City Clerk, please note the time, 5:30. Everybody, please stand for invocation. Councilman Noble, will you please honor us with invocation?
Father God, we come before you this evening to say thank you. Thank you for waking us up. Thank you for allowing us to be here. We ask that you give us the guidance and direction as we lead our council meeting this evening, and give us the understanding that you and only you will be able to do. Father God, we ask that you bless over each and every one of us that are here, and bless those that are on their way. Father God, we ask that you put your loving arms and protection around each and every one of those that need your healing today. We ask this in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Councilmember Hernandez, please lead us in the salute.
Place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes, roll call is complete and all members are present.
Thank you. Participation is invited. If you wish to be heard on any item on the agenda, including any item on the consent calendar, please so indicate by filling out a speaker request card and hand it to the city clerk prior to the agenda item being addressed. If special accommodations are required, a 48-hour notice must be given to the city clerk. Our code of ethics. As your elected governing board, we will remember the code of ethics that we voluntarily and unanimously approved. During this council meeting, we will treat each other and the public with patience, civility, and courtesy. The decisions made tonight will be for the benefit of the community and not for personal gain. Review and approval of the agenda. This is the time for members of the governing board to call for rearranging the order of the agenda or adding items or removing items from the agenda, or removing items from the consent calendar for discussion and or separate action. Items may only be added to the agenda as allowed by state law, including Government Code Section 54954.2, Subdivision B, allowing emergency items to be added by majority vote, and allowing items that arose to the city's attention after the agenda posting deadline, but which require immediate action to be added by a 2/3 vote of the council members present at the meeting, or if less than 2/3 vote of the council members are present, unanimous vote of those members present. With that, we go to item 1, presentation of Measure Q workshop.
Mr. Mayor, we would want the agenda to be approved by the council as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, motion for agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a first by Mayor Pro Tem Rose, a second by Councilmember Hernandez. Call for the vote.
Motion to approve agenda carries 5-0.
Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to our workshop.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, at the request of Council, we are bringing to you the Measure Q workshop with the mid-year perspective, as well as the original 5-year plan that was part of the adoption of the original Measure Q. What we've decided to do tonight is to break out the 5-year perspective with staff, introducing the items that were requested during the original plan, and to introduce you to those items that have already been completed as part of that 5-year plan. First, we've got Chief Cisneros with our fire.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and community. Kind of just highlighting what we've gone over since 2019 regarding Measure Q executions regarding the plan that was agreed upon by this council back on September 17th of 2018. Reference fire agenda item 3486, which you guys do have a handout and notes on your desk for more detailed reference, but this also highlights on page 2 the Measure Q original 5-year plan. As you can see, we do have it broken down by year. Years 1 through 5, actually years 1 through 6 technically, You can see there's hash marks or check marks next to the items that we've already executed per the initial plan and gone through 2019 and 2020. You can see we did fall short a couple regarding our adopted plan per 3486, in which we still need to try and play catch up and trying to get that plan executed. Like I said, you do have highlights on this page. We do still have, like I said, significant outstanding items from what you guys, actually 2 outstanding members currently on the dais were part of that capture group and endorsed this plan. Also, in adopting the Barstow Fire Protection District Strategic Operational Plan, as well as the 5-year strategic plan for the district, which incorporates all these asks out of Measure Q. So you can see that highlighting, going into, I believe there's those just the items, but also if there's any questions in the future with the items delivered on your desktops, you see the approved items, as well as more detailed plans as far as the strategic plan and the operational plan for reference. So you can kind of guide you through the reasons why and the justifications of all these asks through 2019 until today. You can see that we did add the 6 firefighters in year 2019, which includes them staffing the paramedic squad. That was part of the staffing. Increased firefighter training. That's basically bolstering our day-to-day operations and training, as well as specifically sponsoring 3 of our firefighters through the Basic Fire Academy to meet the minimum qualifications as firefighters with the Barstow Fire Protection District. Year 2, getting into 2020, we did purchase the new Type 1 engine, which you see is Medic Engine 366, which is a 2023. Has been in service for about 1.5 years now, and you see it driving around town and in service to this date. Thank you guys for that action. It's a beautiful engine. And then also we added the 3 command and control components, the 3 battalion chiefs, which we do have currently staffed, and we actually will be full staffed with those positions here within the next 30 days. And then we did, in year 2 of 2020, replace the Fire Station 361 swamp coolers. That task was completed as well. And getting into 2023, you can see through 2021, we omitted some of those asks. But we did purchase, coming into last year, we did purchase the new Type 3 engine, which is 60% complete right now. We do have pictures available if need be through that completion process, in which we voted on back in June. And that's kind of the ask from 2023. So as you can see, the rest are a bunch of extended costs as far as some one-time purchases have been highlighted, and you'll see those further in the presentation. And those are Measure Q requests as well. So that's specific to some fire equipment, some other asks. So and I can highlight those when it comes to point questions when we get to those slides. But that's all I have, and that's end of report for this slide. As you can see, we do have a significant amount of our plan was not executed. So we can consider that for future the next 5 years as a plan. So we do have some of these items captured in the next 5 to 10 year Measure Q component in consideration.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on, we have our 5-year presentation for parks, open spaces, and streets from Mr. Alva.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, a
but
minute. I'm going to ask the council, do you want to ask questions by department, or do you want to wait till the end?
I prefer to do it by department.
Okay, so we can hold off on parks. I have Mayor Pro Tem Rose in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question. So it's been a while, and I can't recall the date, but former Fire Chief DiNapoli had brought a presentation to the council at that time, and had pictures of fire trucks and how many need to man that fire truck to be within compliant. I would like to see an update, or if you can give us a brief update on the shortage of staff in the fire that we need to be in compliant per each engine. And he explained, as this fire engine rolls, if the compliance is to have 4 people on it and we can only staff 2, it sets us up for liability.
That's correct. So currently we do have 2 fully staffed fire engines within the community, as well as a paramedic squad. So there's each one of those engines staffed with 3 people, which we reference as a 3-0 staffing. And then our squad is referenced as 2 people. So currently on duty today, with including the battalion chief, we have 9 personnel on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. NFPA 1710 actually requires that for us to have any kind of significant safety response is to have at least 17 people on the fire ground and responding within 10 minutes. So, and on scene within 15 minutes. Unfortunately, due to our staffing and the layout of our community, we aren't able to complete that or accomplish that requirement, which is a recommendation by the National Fire Protection Association. But also you can see that a lot of these asks were to mitigate that, your concern as far as having those fire ground numbers or those personnel numbers actually responding. So currently, with the asks accumulated in the first 5 years, that would have gave us an additional 18 full-time employees within the district, which would significantly meet those numbers, so we'd have 15 people immediately responding per day within the community, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Unfortunately, that we were able to accomplish that through these asks, but unfortunately, we have to rely on our cooperators. So just to give you guys an FYI, our cooperators obviously are Marine Corps Logistics Base, Fort Irwin. Both of those have significant ETAs, as well as our San Bernardino County resource, Hinckley. Fire Station 56 is volunteer staff. There's no paid staff. They're not staffed 24 hours a day, and there's no guarantee that they're going to respond if they're requested. So with that, we have a next full-time fire stations in Fire Station 4 in the community of Silver Lakes. And so that's about a 30-minute ETA. So just to give you an example, due to the St. Lawrence incident, you guys remember the St. Lawrence happened December of year before last, so a little over a year ago, where we had the unfortunate fatality fire of 2 children. The analogy is in our command and control and our application of executing rescues is for every 1 victim, we have to have 12 firefighters. We're unable to accomplish those tasks even to this day. So that's how we judge our risk management and risk analysis and our intervention and actions is based on the manpower, and we just don't have the manpower to support. So unfortunately, we are a community of a suburban outlook, but we're actually rurally staffed as a fire district. Due to the, obviously we do have the community we serve as far as the city, but we also serve the outlying unincorporated areas of a total of about 54,000 residents compared to our city residents and our 25,000 residents. So we are extended a little bit due to that request for all of our, unincorporated areas that we do cover under our fire district's purview. So with that, the numbers we don't meet. We would get closer to that with all these asks that came through, the first 5 years of Measure Q. Unfortunately, within, you guys see some of that highlighted as far as if we did on page 2, on the backside of the notes from the fire district memorandum, you'll see that we do have it highlighted of the projected, what would it look like as far as 48 full-time employees, 46 operational versus the current 28 operational employees, including that's 2 administrative staff. So that would have been a total of, if we would have followed through with our plan, we would have 3 full-time fire engine companies, 1 ladder truck company, 1 paramedic squad, and 1 battalion chief, compared to the 2 engines and 1 paramedic squad and 1 battalion chief we currently have.
Thank you. And the, I think this will be my last question. So I would hope that getting the staff necessary to get us closer to those required numbers would be in our best interest for the safety of our city and the surrounding cities that we do support. So we really need to look at this and make these priorities. Have you done an analysis of how many positions we can bring in that would offset, which would be more cost effective? Right now, we're all aware that there is a tremendous amount of overtime. But with the overtime comes fatigue and all of the other stuff that comes with the overtime. And if we were to hire hypothetically 3 more, have you done the analysis of what would be the best practice, the best way to move forward?
Yeah, we've conducted a needs analysis and needs assessment of what we could actually do to kind of expedite, like you said, mitigating the overtime expenditures, trying to retention and recouping, recruiting as well. We do have a plan of right now of converting our paramedic squad with the addition of 3 full-time employees, and converting a couple of those positions would be a third engine company. It would make the medic squad dormant for now, but what the plan would be in about a year after we implement that third engine company, we would actually reinstate the squad, and then we would stair step to develop a big build out with all of our big the big projects that we have come to the community with the casino and the rail. So we do have a build out. We do have a plan where we could execute probably within the next 90 days a third engine company into service. May require a little bit of overtime just because of onboarding and turning around and hiring people, but we can do that within 90 days to get a third engine company in play, which would actually bring us an additional 3 personnel per day on duty, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, as well as more pumping equipment, more apparatus, and all that good stuff. So we do have that ability, and we do have that as a primary plan to go ahead and execute once we get the approvals and additional 3 full-time employees back into the district, bringing the full-time employees to 33 employees. Right now, we could actually add a third engine company.
Thank you for that information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams, questions for Chief Cisneros?
First of all, Chief, we appreciate everything you do. Don't ever misunderstand that. Why don't I see overtime on this projection list?
We haven't gotten to that yet, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is just basically the 5-year plan and the items that were originally requested in that 5-year plan, just to kind of bring us up to date with where we are as far as purchases.
Overtime was not part of the 5-year plan.
Not as far as the original ask. So this is basically what was brought to the table when Measure Q was voted and adopted. So we're going to get to the details as far as expenditures later on in the presentation.
What is your number one problem getting firefighters to come up to the city of Barstow to serve our community?
So the number one complaint and the number one concern is actually the considerate pay that our employees are paid. So they're under market for what they do, comparatively trying to get someone to drive through the recruitment market from Victorville down the hill, especially when you have agencies paying anywhere from 30 to 40% more than what our employees currently make at the current rates they are.
What is the hourly number, the dollar amount that you're behind on or we're behind on?
So it's kind of hard since we're considered a 56-hour work week versus a 40-hour work week. So our 56-hour rate's going to look a lot lower. But I would say anywhere, like I said, anywhere from that 30 to 40% lower than the median with the way the market is for the fire service right now. So it's kind of hard to generalize.
Well, give me an idea, $10, $15 an hour, what's the number?
So currently right now, our mid-step firefighter paramedic is probably making about $37 an hour, I believe. And that's just about mid-step, I do believe. But I would have to come back with you with the confirmed salary schedule on that. So
In other cities?
other cities are probably, you have Chino Valley Fire District, which is a similar fire district to us. Their firefighters are starting off at $130,000 a year.
Chief, I get that, but I need to make a decision on my mind, the number for hourly. Is that $20, $30? I mean, I'm not going to take $100 versus what we're paying and make that number. That's,
No, and the hourly rate, like I said, it's different calculating between a 56-hour work week and a 40-hour work week and a 2912 versus a 2080 annual hourly. So we could get that information back to you, and I have a spreadsheet, but I don't have it with me right now.
Okay.
Of everything including all the stipends that they are allotted, broken down from actually annually, monthly, biweekly, and then hourly as well.
I just want to make sure we're clear that you're having a problem bringing in new firefighters.
That's
They're
correct.
going to other cities, not ours.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Before I go on the next council person, I have a question to help Councilmember Williams out here. Didn't the council approve a comp study a couple years back?
Yeah, we have not, it's not a final version yet, but I believe in the next couple of weeks we will have that final version of the class and comp study, and we will present that to council. So you'll see the class and comp based on all the surrounding cities. I believe there was 10 cities that they took into account compared to what our current rates are, and we'll present that to you guys so that you guys can, we'll present it to council so you can see the numbers.
Thank you. Next, I have up Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you. Reality check. It all depends on the funding. So it's my understanding we have never been up to par as far as the personnel on the engines. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. And I think the council needs to know that. It's a matter of money. And I am thankful that you did the budget, because when the original strategic plan, it was very generic. So I'm glad you broke down, because originally it was said 15 new firefighters, 3 shift battalion chiefs, purchase a new paramedic squad, which we have done. The ladder truck was always an issue. And the thing was, if the hotels build that, then they should be the responsible party for paying for that. And I know we have purchased a new replacement fire engine. When you look at that, you also have to look at the debt that we incur as a result of trying to maintain our fire department that has always been in debt. And the intent of Measure Q, because Measure J...
Councilmember Hernandez, is that leading to a
Yeah, I'm coming to the question.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
So, Measure J did not pass and Measure Q did. So, my first question was why a budget was not presented, so that's why I'm glad that's there. But it's all about, so you have mutual aid, right?
That's correct.
And we do the same thing for others, correct?
That's correct.
Right. And then we have people that are outside the city that you provide service to. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. And have you brought on firefighters that we have put through the training process, that we have paid the cost as a city?
That's correct. We paid for 3 firefighters to attend the basic fire academy.
Okay. And what do we require of them in exchange for us paying for that training?
There's no contract associated with them and actually us providing that training. We hope through retention and ability for the district to provide good benefits, health, and compensation for that. But there's no obligation for the employee to leave a day after they come back from their training.
Right. And I question that because the county does the same type. And their position is, we pay for your training, you give us back so many years. So it's a win-win for both parties because they get the training, and once they give the time back, then they're free to do, and I wonder why we don't look at that.
So we've talked about that, and obviously this is with me being so new to the organization that we've pondered trying to figure out how to engage that at this point. Obviously, it's going to be a significant ask and consideration and concerted effort with all of everybody up here in the dais. But currently, it's not highlighted in our job classification and or our recruitment process. But we would love to look at that, and we've actually tried to discover to see what that would be as a best option. So,
So that we could recruit people that are interested and are willing. I see that as do you see that as a possibility with the fire department?
yes, I do. We'd have to get creative, but obviously the shortage is the paramedic side of the firefighters. We can find firefighter EMTs all day long.
Okay.
Paramedic qualified firefighters is a challenge because there's so much other opportunity, other organizations that pay like
Right,
we
there's
stated,
the variety
more.
of positions
So
that they can take, yeah.
we obviously, we would love to get creative like that, and that'd be in concert with our labor group as well as everybody up here on the dais. And we've kind of talked about that with labor many times over coffee and seeing what we could best attract as well as get people in the door. But then again, it's still no guarantee that they're not going to chase other opportunities as they come forward.
Well,
down their
that's
pipe,
always,
so.
yeah, right. Then my other concern, you mentioned opening another fire station or whatever. Have you looked at what funding we have? We have a wish list, because we always used to have a wish list in my agency. And we were lucky if we got one out of the, so, so you see that as part of a wish list?
So obviously, a wish list comes along with all the opportunity coming to the community. So we're kind of hinging a lot of stuff on the hope of our growth as a community with all the projects. We do currently have a strategic plan for all the build-out to suit to where our organization is going to minimally grow up to about 5 or 6 fire stations, and that includes when we start negotiating with LAFCO and a bunch of other absorption and trying to expand and contract as need be, as well as getting up to about anywhere from 79 to 84 employees, and that's including all the asks that we're going to be from all the projects coming inbound. So
Hopefully.
yeah. Hope is not a strategy, but we're hoping that all
Hopefully.
this stuff comes in, and we have
So-
trigger points set for that.
Right. So my concern right now is, have you done the budget within what measure Q funds we have? Because it's my understanding that we are not getting the funds that we projected, and we're going to be under. So have you created a budget for us to see?
So executive staff, we just made aware of those deficits about last week. So we really haven't been able to fine tune the numbers. But to give you just a generic average, it's about $3.5 million a year to staff one fire station with one engine company. So that's a total of 9 employees out of that station. So that's barring any one-time costs as far as building a fire station, as far as procuring equipment and all that stuff. So we've broken that down with Ms. Harris over here, and we've kind of hinged those numbers to see what it looks like and kind of forecast so we can hit those trigger points when need be.
Yeah. So I would like to see what the budget will look like for 25, 26, because we've made a lot of statements, and that's what I would like to see.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We can make that happen.
Thank you, Councilmember Hernandez. Councilmember Noble.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Man, we got a lot of work to do, I tell you. Based on, Chief, thank you for the presentation, and I see we got some things that we got to do. My question to you is, what does it take to get a paramedic or a firefighter? What is the dynamics that we need on a job description in order to get the best qualified person to be a firefighter?
So obviously with the minimum qualifications, just for someone to walk in the doors, and we'll start off with the firefighter EMT, which is the entry-level firefighter position that we have within the district. So that's anywhere from, I would say anywhere from approximately about 17 to 18 months just of community college level training, and then above that being accessible and trying to get in the employment market and be competitive. So anywhere from about 2 years to 3 years is when an employee is for a firefighter candidate is really marketable to get employed by an agency. So, and then on top of that, if we send them to paramedic school, that's another 14 months of training on top of just the firefighter.
Excuse me, one minute, please. The gentleman on the phone, could you please step into the lobby? Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And so usually it's about 14 months on top of that entry-level firefighter training. So I would say conservatively it takes anyone for 4 to 5 years to become a firefighter paramedic employee unless they've been employed as a firefighter EMT prior. So it's pretty competitive as far as the firefighter paramedic. Firefighter EMTs are, like I said, is a more marketable market for us. But obviously we got to consider our paramedic and our advanced life support service that we offer to the community.
Chief, do we ever get any of those that already are qualified based on coming from another district or another area?
So you're seeing a lot of the senior staff come with experience just due to opportunity and us doing lateral and external recruitments for the company officer or the captain level. Engineer level's a little bit tougher, but you're seeing, to give you an example, we supported this we just did recruitments for captain and battalion chief. So captains, we had 22 applications. And then battalion chief, we had 18 applications. So we're getting that competitive market, but they're also senior employees that have been about 25 years on the job, and they're actually with the opportunity they have with getting into a different retirement system and the benefits that come with that is why it's attractive for those senior people. But it doesn't help with the younger generation because those employees usually last about 5 years or so until they hit truly retirement age, and then obviously they move on or retire.
Okay. You also mentioned the 40-hour, 50-some-hour week type of stuff.
Yeah, so, typically a lot of people don't realize that firefighters work what we call a 56-hour work week, to where general employees work a 40-hour work week. So our 56-hour work week is the equivalent, but just 24-hour shifts. So the typical firefighter works 2,912 hours a year without overtime, and the typical 40-hour employee works 2,080 hours on a 8 to 5 type schedule. So 2912 obviously, and to put in perspective, so firefighters will say will do a 30-year career. Every minute of 10 years of that, they're a resident of the community and the station, and they live in the community. That's without overtime. So with the way overtime has been over the last 20 years, they're showing that the average firefighter spends 50% away from their family and in the community that they're serving as residents. So, and we all know that the typical lifespan of someone living in their home is about 10 years. So our firefighters are actually living in the fire station home a lot longer than most residents live in their home within their communities these days. So the firefighters are truly community citizens. And we get asked often, and I hate to admit that we know where most things are located in Stater Brothers or Walmart, and get asked quite often where the corn is or the tomatoes. And so we offer those professional services as well. So
I understand. Hey, so let me ask you a question. So is it typical for a firefighter to do 40 hours or 50-some plus hours?
Due to the shift work, we're considered 56 hours. Like I'm a 40-hour employee, but I work obviously the regular schedule like the rest of the executive staff. So the shift guys you see working 24 hours that are getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night, if that, uninterrupted sleep. Those are the shift guys which work the 56-hour work week. So the 24-hour employees are the 56-hour employees.
But is that common across all fire stations, or is that just unique here?
No, it's 95% of the fire departments in the United States are working 56-hour work weeks.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Noble. I have Councilmember Williams.
Chief, are you having the same problems as other fire departments recruiting firefighters? So this is not just specific for the city of Barstow.
No, it's not.
It's
industry-wide.
all over.
Industry-wide.
Right. Are you going after the insurance companies when you guys are called out to a fire at a house or a vehicle fire?
So we are redusting off some cost recovery components. We do have the ability to cost recover on most insurable incidents, especially with, traffic collisions on the 15 freeway for non-residents. We did bring that, and I have it printed out on my desk at the station, but we do have a resolution which gives us the ability to cost recover. No different than we have the city's fee schedule, which we are accommodated, and the OES fee schedule as well, which we can cost recover. So we do have the ability to cost recover the funds, and getting back onto the overtime comment, it did show at mid-year that we're 130%, 37% in overtime, but our actual overall budget was 2%. We were at 48% expended of our budget as of the 31st of December. So those perceptions, but also that 137% in overtime is probably about 40% cost recoverable through the state. So truly those numbers are a little skewed, and I have to do a little bit of mathing to kind of get out. And we do have about $300,000 in outstanding cost recoverable to cover that overtime cost that we haven't received from Sacramento just yet.
Great. So right now, currently, we're not going after those insurance companies.
That was dropped probably about 7 or 8 years ago, or that fire administration didn't want to execute that order.
What is the cost that we lost on not going after the insurance companies?
And that's a good question. I'll just be giving
Give me a guess.
I would assume that we could probably cost recover no less, and I would assume about $50,000 a year, just depending on and that's even if we want to start, that's just basically billing non-residents and all the freeway access and all the non-residents of the community. But if we started And for example, if we go out with PD on a call on Main Street on a TC, we do have the ability to cost recover our funds as well as law enforcement funds as well, as long as we have the avenues and the correct information to go after the vehicle insurance and cost recover all the man hours associated and equipment costs of that. So we do have hourly manpower hours, and we do have cost of our equipment as well.
And are you going to bring that back to us sometime in the future?
It's on my desk, and I'm ready to bring it back.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Mayor Pro Tem Rose?
I apologize, but I do have one question. It's actually, kind of is based on what I just heard. So the cost recovery. So let's say 4 of your staff members go on a call. 2 belong to Measure Q funding and the other 2 general funds. Yeah, it's all the same funds, I get it. My question would be, on the cost recovery, do the 2 on the cost recovery that actually were funded through Measure Q budget funds those recoveries go back to the budget line item for Measure Q?
So is the Measure Q employees recovered under Measure Q revenue is what you're asking, I'm assuming, so.
Yes.
That would be a question for finance. I do know we track the overtime, so I'm not sure if they actually get redeposited in those line items of Measure Q.
Yeah, so that would require a little bit of analysis. We track expenses, we track costs, we track overtime. As far as the revenue, if it doesn't come to us separated out by the employee, then I don't believe that there is a method in place, but I would have to go back and do some analysis to see.
It would just make sense that it would go back into the appropriate funds because they're funded from Measure Q. And like I said, general fund Measure Q, but there's a line item specific for Measure Q. Thank you.
Okay, final question, and that would be from me. Do we have any comments, finance, staff, before we move on to parks?
The only comment that I would like to throw out there is the way we prepared this agenda or this item is we wanted to go back to the original roots of what Measure Q was intended for, and we wanted to provide an update. That's why you have the previous 5-year plan, and we're showing you all the things that we did accomplish of that original list. The reason why you don't have a new 5-year plan sitting in front of you is because what we intend to do is we've been working on it. We have things all written out, but our goal is to meet with the new CM whenever they come on board and make sure our goals are all aligned. There's going to be some questions coming to council through the new CM on priority lists. So as we were discussing, Chief Cisneros was discussing about adding 3 full-time employees to potentially add that additional engine. We have that written down as a priority in his Measure Q asks for council, along with PD, along with parks. Obviously, those funds exceed what we have in the budget and what our revenue estimates are going to be. So that's why we don't want to make any decisions until the new CM comes, and then they'll present to council and say this is their recommendation. Some of the things are going to be explained in more detail, but some of those are going to be, we have to do certain things in order for LAFCO process, and some of those things that are going to be required of us that are going to cost us funds, but then will be recoverable. So it's just there's a lot of moving parts, but we're going to have to really sit down and explain it, and give a whole nother presentation on, but we still have to write it down, we still have to budget for it, even though we can potentially get that money back. So there's a lot of analysis that have to be done, and we were going to come back with the new CM who will be presenting that to you guys. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the parks.
All right, so Mr. Alva?
Sorry. Yeah, we'll go to public comment after the council's done asking questions. Did you get your request card in to speak? Okay, it'll be, public comments will be last after the council's done asking questions, but be sure you get your card in to speak.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Man, that's a tough act to follow after Corey. That was a great presentation by Corey. I'm going to do my best because there's 82 projects here. And so I would like to talk about the ones that I've completed, unless council feels that I should address it in a different way. But there's 82 of them, and I'll try to go through them as quickly as I can. Jasper Park. We're really almost to the finish line with Jasper Park and balancing other projects, as you can see, the other locations. But Jasper Park is, in my opinion, is almost 85 to 90% done. We just got to do some little incidentals, and then we'll start putting in the toilets and sinks inside there, because the building was not ADA compliant. So we had to go in there and knock down some walls and then cut into the concrete slab and move some drains over so we can meet the compliancy of ADA. And that's a lot what's going on with the different locations, that we're dealing with the old infrastructure and we're trying to bring it up to code. We're trying to bring it up to standard. That way the community can appreciate what the city has asset-wise and how we're moving forward with renovating these areas. As you can see, the initial shutdown of Jasper Park building was due to the septic. We got that replaced in 2023, so my 5-year plan is going back to 2023. It's still shut down based on, we might as well address a lot of the other things. We placed a new roof. We wanted to make sure that we had a new roof there before we start remodeling the inside. And then we, aesthetically, we made the appearance a lot better with stucco because it had T111 siding. T111 siding is a decorative plywood that usually comes with those type of buildings, but we wanted to make it aesthetically pleasing, so we stuccoed it. We had exterior lighting because that building had suffered some damage through some bad actors, whether it's graffiti, whatever the case may be. We just wanted to lighten up the dark areas around the building. We did remove the acoustic ceiling and the texture because we wanted to, modernize it again. But we ran into a little situation that had a small percentage of asbestos, so that kind of paused a little bit in the remodeling. We had an asbestos company come out and address that. They did a great job, and so after that we were able to move forward. The new flooring is completed. We're trying to keep a standard of the flooring that we put in PD Dispatch and Cora Harper. That way, when we have stock of flooring, if the flooring becomes damaged, we're not having to chase down a special floor that's different from the others. This one floor design will be used in several of the buildings that we have. The furnace, it was in the middle of the building, so we removed it and put it up in the attic, and so that way it created more floor space for that building. We armed the Jasper Park building. We have some bad actors in that area. Me and Corey were at the old fire station there at Jasper Park because there was a break-in. So PD came and did their excellent service that they provide, and hopefully we don't experience that again. We're also going to alarm that building as well. I'm meeting with the alarm company tomorrow so we can protect the city's assets, and then the inventory that Corey has there. He has some inventory inside the building that needs to be protected. We do have some solar lighting for the basketball court and the playground. We were able to buy that through Measure Q, and so we're trying to do things smarter, and we don't want to run underground conduit and damage the other infrastructure that's there that we don't know about because we don't have blueprints to the property. So we purchased some solar lighting that it's going to allow the community to enjoy the park in longer summer hours. The trees there, they're probably original to the park, and so we're looking at replacing the trees there as well. And I'll continue talking about trees at a lot of the other parks, but the parks are such an original state with the original trees that they've lived a long life providing the shade that's necessary to enjoy the park. There's not a lot of park benches at Jasper Park. We would like to incorporate more benches around the basketball court and around the playground area, and also incorporate the barbecue pits as well for the community to enjoy. That's pretty much it for Jasper Park. The sports park, the rehab of both snack bars was the second-story decking. We saw that some beams were compromised based on some wood rot, and so we were able to replace all those beams. But in order to replace the beams, we had to bust out the concrete that was on the second deck. So that took a little bit of expertise. That was more expertise than Public Works. We were able to negotiate with Skanska since they were here building us a new bridge. We took them over and they looked at it and they said that that would be no problem for them to replace that. So we were able to get that those repairs done through Skanska. So thank you to Skanska that we have a new upper deck that's safe for the community to enjoy underneath without getting hurt. We also installed new drinking fountains. They're ADA compliant, and again, we're trying to make all our locations ADA compliant, ADA friendly. We want to meet the requirements of the state. We bought a new bunker rake. They're not very cheap. They're expensive, but they do the job. They do the job for the baseball fields in manicuring them to the best of playing ability. The batting cage net, we're experiencing some labor cost. I guess there's everybody appreciates the labor cost in installing a new batting net. We're looking at if we can do that in-house, but it does take a little bit of knowledge to get it up there and some equipment. So we're looking at some outside contractors, but yet we're not forgetting about ourselves. See if we can have some cost savings if we do it in-house. The pitching machines, they're 30 years old. And I just had the park supervisor order some parts so we can get those pitching machines back up for the sports teams. But we're finding out that there's some obsolete parts, and that's it's going to be it's not going to be good trying to keep those machines going, because if we can't find parts, then the machine is down. I did produce some quotes to our CM. I think the quotes for those machines to replace the entire machines, the entire machine itself for all the batting cages is $27,000 and change. The labor, I believe, is around $11,000. So I think that's a great price to update the machines. Again, they're 30 years old, and some of them have obsolete parts. We do need to upgrade the restrooms there. We have some bad actors that go in the restrooms and do bad things. So we need to address those as well. There was some danger in some of the baseball fields where there was a hump. The sports park is at the highest point of Barstow for the community to enjoy. The clay blows into the grass, and so over the years there's a growth of height that if you're playing first, second, shortstop, or third base, it can become a danger because the ball will hit the hump that joins the grass, and we don't want our players to get hurt. We don't want the youth to get hurt. So we've addressed two fields up there, and then we have 2 fields that are going to be starting next week to address those problems. We did replace the wiring looms in all the lights. Again, the park is 30 years old. The wiring looms inside the post have outlived their life. And so we were experiencing a lot of electrical problems with the lights not lighting up or the whole pole not lighting up. So we just pulled the trigger and let's get all the wiring looms replaced and all the poles so we can eliminate those problems moving forward. I see replace the sauna, so that's the Cora Harper. But we did replace the sauna. They were outdated and they weren't ADA compliant as well. So I know the big thing there at the Cora Harper is the chiller and the air conditioning. We're currently working on that. We're working out the details with the funding. Am I right, Mr. Heldreth? We're working those out. So we'll see. Moving forward, hopefully we can get a reasonable price for the replacement of that. We did buy a food warming cabinet since there's events happening there. We want to offer that to the community. If they want to bring their own food in and not hire a caterer, we can offer a food warming cabinet, a steam table. That way they can enjoy their own cooking, if that's the right way to say that. We do need to replace some appliances at the sports park as well. I know Chelsea Phillips is working on that moving forward because some of they're 30 years old and we haven't replaced any of them. We do have a new stage. It is a bit better stage than what we used to have. It's bigger. And it also has an ADA ramp, so we can accommodate those ADA individuals that need to get on the stage. We did remodel the administration office to the Cora Harper. We replaced the front glass. We made it more safe. And we also replaced the flooring and installed a drinking fountain there as well that's ADA compliant. The drinking fountain was not working for quite some time, so we got that replaced. But there, as you know, as you can see, there's a lot of projects going on. Again, there's 82 of them. Henderson Pool, we replaced the sand filters. We went to a media glass, which is better than sand. It filtrates better. And then what we would like to install is the fabric awning over the kiddie pool. Right now it's full exposure to the sun, and so we would like to get a fabric awning or shade structure over the kiddie pool, and then as well parallel to the building of the main building where the changing rooms and the filtration room and the lifeguard room are. The changing rooms are very, very outdated. They're original to the building. I couldn't tell you when the building was placed there, but they are original to the building, and we would like to get those replaced as well. We did upgrade the chemical filtration injection. Somewhere along the line, past staff had changed it, and it just wasn't efficient anymore. So we went back to the original design, and we're seeing tremendous notice in how clear it is. The winds here for the pool is no help to us. We have to keep vacuuming it and so on, but we'll do our due diligence in the maintenance of keeping it clean for the community. We did replace the kiddie pump as well. That runs, all the filtration system runs 24 hours a day, so it does take a wear and tear on everything as well as the digital controllers. We did replace the pool lights to LED for efficiency. We do have solar lights for the park. They're at the courtyard. We're waiting for a technician to get scheduled to come out and show us how to properly install these solar lights within the park. I upgraded the parking lot lights to LED. They were very, very dim, and we're having a lot of bad activity at night. So that's hopefully it's a deterrent for them having to hang out there beyond and overnight. We are working with Musco Lighting for the baseball lights on the Focus and Fields. We're, with Fidel Martinez's help, we're navigating through Edison and getting those details worked out. So hopefully here soon we should have those lights up and running. The snack bar, we removed the top story, and then we're gonna rehab that snack bar just like we did Lillian Park. In addition to that, we're gonna add park benches and trash cans, so that way more people can enjoy the park. We're limited on park benches and trash cans. There is also a lot of old trees there, and ADA walkways, we don't have very many or none at all to the picnic benches, so ADA is only limited, I think, only to one area for a picnic bench, but we want to have all access to the park to be ADA standards. Sternical Park, there's not a really lot going on there since in the past, it's been rehabbed with a new restroom, some walkways. It just received a fabric shade structure several years ago, so there's not too much going on at Sternical Park. Lillian Park, as we all know, that one is almost 95% done, close to 100%. There's a few little incidentals that need to happen there, but we went in there and revamped all the snack bar for the Little League there, and I welcome anybody to go see it because it's really nice inside and it's modernized as well. You can see that we replaced the appliances inside. We installed an HVAC system. It had an old swamp cooler on the side that kept getting robbed for its components, but we put it on the roof and put a security cage over it, so that way nobody can take it away from the snack bar. Dana Park, it received a new HVAC system, so I believe it's running efficiently, better than the old one. We want to reduce the landscape there. We're looking at removing some areas of grass. Councilman Hernandez, I know you made mention that you love grass and grass needs to remain in the park, but we're open to any ideas. We're open to any ideas moving forward. But the cost of water for the park's budget is getting very expensive, but we can look at that. As you all know, we got a new pickleball courts down on Barstow Road. We had that resurfaced. I'm glad the community is enjoying that. From what I hear, it's pretty busy on the weekends, and it's hard to get a time to play pickleball, but that's great, right? That's really great that the community is taking advantage of that. We are looking at the tennis court lights. We have two options. We can go hardwire, which is we're looking at about $280,000, or we can go solar, and this is from the company that I've purchased the other solar lights from. They gave us a cost of $90,000 for those solar lights. Unfortunately, we had some bad actors that ruined the infrastructure, and that's why the cost to go back to the hard lighting is so expensive. The senior center, we did replace the makeup air system in the kitchen. According to staff in the kitchen, it's the greatest thing that they've had in such a long time. And so I'm really glad that we were able to provide that for the senior center. We are looking at the landscape at this time. We don't want to change too much of it, but our local mining company don't produce that rock or color rock or style rock anymore. I've reached out to as far as Palmdale and as far as Whitewater for that style of rock, that color rock. And so it's really hard to match that, and I don't want to bring in something hoping that it's going to match. We're going to look at a new design. We want to bring up the senior center. I think it's time that it gets a really nice facelift outside. And I've also talked with staff there about remodeling the restroom in there and also making that senior center ADA compliant. Again, I didn't cover all 82 projects, but I'm pretty sure I got close to it. We're 52% completion on that, and so we're still working hard. We're still working forward on a lot of projects so we can bring up the infrastructure. Going into Public Works, we're still dealing with the sidewalks. That's never going to go away. It's just
Wait a minute. Let's do questions on parks, and then we'll go into Public Works.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any questions to staff on parks? Councilmember Williams.
Yes. Are you currently understaffed?
Yes, sir.
By how many?
Well, there's currently, in parks, we have 8. And if we can do a better job, provide a better service to the community, 4 is a great start. 6 would be better. But I know it all, at the end of the day, it all comes down to
Money.
the salary cost. And so 4 would help us out tremendously.
Are those 8 in parks only, or are they all over the city?
They're all over the city. They maintain 10 parks, 19 landscape locations. So we got 29 locations altogether.
So they're not working in streets, these 8?
No, no, they're not.
Okay. The insurance for the Ferguson Park, the insurance for the theft of the lights. Can anybody tell me we've received that funding from the insurance?
I'm not aware of the insurance claim for the lights.
I'm not aware of the insurance claim either.
When the Ferguson Park vandalism happened, it was several years ago. I think it was probably 4 or 5 years ago whenever they stole all the lights or the wire from Ferguson itself. The one currently that we were referring to as the tennis courts, that one, that person, the PD arrested the person, but our insurance company, we have a deductible of a certain amount, and it wouldn't warrant the city to turn it into an insurance claim. We almost have to just pay for it ourselves. On that one in particular, I'm not familiar with the Ferguson one, but I do know that happened over 4 to 5 years ago.
Well, I was told that that insurance was paid to us, and we had that funding, and I've never heard anything after that as far as going towards the lights.
I could look into that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I could look into that, but we are replacing those lights. It's budgeted, and we are replacing those lights this year.
And we could be in the same situation as the tennis courts. It just wasn't worth charging our insurance.
Correct.
Okay. Water times, we're going to change those?
Yeah, we're always adjusting the water times based on what Mother Nature brings us on the seasons and month to month.
I mean, I see it on at 10 o'clock in the 11 to 12 o'clock in the afternoon. With the heat, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, some of the stations, and I'll use Ferguson Park for an example, it has 27 stations. And so during summertime, we run the stations about 50 minutes to 55 minutes. And so there's going to be almost a 24-hour period in order to water the park.
The height of the grass, are we cutting that lower? Or are we going to leave it where it's currently at now?
The height of the grass, based on the manufacturer, which the seed company that we use, their recommendations is 3.5 at its lowest. But now we've went to a different seed, more of an athletic sports seed. And so I believe and I hate to give you a number, but I believe it's 3 to 2.5, 2.5 inches, 3 inches now.
I like that. The time for the staff to cut the grass, it's rumored that they have a certain amount of time to cut and leave. Is that true?
That is not true, sir.
Okay. Ferguson, we're gonna put some locks on that bathroom? Currently, there's no door handles, no locks.
Yes, I had staff fabricate some pretty good iron gates, and we've changed the lock system to it. So we're trying to do things better to prevent breakage or damage and break-ins and so forth, overnight camping.
For the main pool, when you said kiddie pump, is that running the entire facility or just the kiddie side of that pool?
That's just running the kiddie side.
Okay.
The big pool has its own system. They're 2 separate systems. They don't share the same filtration system.
I believe we have a pump on backup that you guys had repaired in case the big pump goes out?
That is correct.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. And next, Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you. It was my understanding that the city did buy a pitching machine. What happened to that?
That is handled through recreation, so I really don't know all the details of that pitching machine, so I'm not gonna answer
Can we
that.
track that down? It's my understanding it's our machine, and I was told somebody confiscated or whatever, so I would appreciate.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we actually
Okay.
purchased 2 of them, and we'll follow up to find out the location of those.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hernandez. Next, Councilmember Noble.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, that was one of my questions, but the other one was the fabric awning for the basketball court over at the sports park. Are we looking to replace those, or are we plan on doing something a little bit different?
We're not looking to replace it, we're looking at doing something different. As you can see, it didn't survive here in the desert.
Right.
But it is very, very badly damaged. We don't want to put another vinyl over the top because the structure itself cannot support it anymore.
Will some type of netting work?
I think at this point, if the city does anything there, we're going to place ourselves more in a liability.
Yeah, the city engineer went out there and did a structural evaluation of that structure, and he recommended that we do not add anything to that structure anymore, and just keep it as is until we replace the entire structure.
Okay. And is that on the horizon to replace that?
That's one of the items that I would like to bring back for more discussion on. You can go multiple different ways. Do we enclose the entire thing and make it more of a multi-purpose gym kind of a building? So you can do metal building, and then you have roll-ups on the side, and you can use it for more purposes that way. Or do you go back to a similar type structure to where it just keeps out the rain and the sun, and then it lets all the elements of wind and all that into the facility like it originally was designed for? So that's going to be there's a cost difference, of course, but we do plan on bringing you multiple options and then let council direct staff on which way they would like to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mayor Pro Tem Rose.
Thank you. I'll make this quick. How many staff members in parks are funded in Measure Q? And this would be for our finance director.
I do not believe we have some casual employees for the sports park. Those are just part-timers. I don't know the exact amount, but I know the dollar amount that was budgeted for that purpose. I believe it was $90,000 for this year.
And when you say casual, are those temporary? You said part-timers?
Yes.
And they work 15, 20 hours a week?
They're not allowed to work more than the 28 hours a week per part-time regulation. So normally they're scheduled, I believe, at the 20-hour interval weekly.
And are we well within our budget?
Yes.
Thank you. So I guess my next question would be, since no staff in the parks are funded through Measure Q other than the ones you just mentioned, then with the overtime, because they're understaffed, have you done an analysis on overtime? Would it save us more money to hire those individuals versus paying any overtime?
In that particular situation, yes, because we save the cost by hiring a part-time person. So there really is no need to go into an overtime if you have plenty of part-time staffers. In other situations, it's a little bit more complicated. But I don't believe there's an overtime issue with the park side as of right now. I believe we're okay.
Thank you. And then as far as the pitching machines, so I kind of think I'm aware of that as well. So my question would be, were these pitching machines funded through Measure Q?
Yes.
And I knew the answer. So my question would be, if they're funded through Measure Q for a specific organization, let's say it's I'm going to say soccer because it makes no sense for it to belong to soccer. Okay, but let's say soccer got the pitching machines. Do they own it? Do they have rights over it? Or is it a shared resource that, that all sports that really need a pitching machine can utilize?
It's my understanding is if the city of Barstow purchased the machine, it's the city of Barstow's property. And if we, and I don't know, but if it's set up for softball specifically, I know you can buy attachments to make it for baseball too. I don't know for a fact which one it's set up for, but I believe that should be shared within all organizations. I'm sure that there are seasons run simultaneously, so you can't just have one, but it is the city of Barstow's property.
So we could hypothetically come up with a schedule on this sport and then this sport, if it's the same season, that they use it from this time frame or these days and the, rotating times and days, correct?
Correct.
Have we ever done that?
I do not believe so.
Okay, so that would be something that we can look at so that everybody can take advantage of the resources we have. That's doing more for less.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other thing that I'd have to say is, Mr. Alva, have you come up with, I think you said it, but I just want to hear it. To reduce the grass for different type of landscape, let's say a desert landscape. I love the grass as well. But to save us money, especially if, for instance, Dana Park, is the water bill being paid out of Measure Q?
I'd have to defer to Ms.
So
Harris.
we do have utilities coming from Measure Q in certain installations. So Sports Park, I believe the utilities are budgeted in Measure Q. I believe there may be some for, we haven't gotten to that part of the presentation yet, but there.
Yeah, it's on slide 15, Sydney. According to the slide we have on slide 15, the sports park is
Right.
budgeted at $340 casual, but that includes casual salaries, repairs and maintenance, program supplies, and utility bills.
Part of the package that I've provided does have a breakdown of which departments and sections of those departments are covered in these costs. And we'll get into that further into the presentation.
Thank you, because if we can go to desert landscaping for cheaper, then I'm even more for so that. But, specifically, we're talking about Measure Q, so I was
Right.
curious about the Measure Q. So thank you for answering those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Williams.
The sports park, the field with the clay that's blown over and it's got that hump in there and that, what's the cost of fixing that?
It's $55,000.
How long do we let that go?
That's an accumulation of the lifespan of the sports park. There's really no way to prevent that since it's in the area of the wind up there. But when they come in, they re-laser the infield and blend it back to its original design.
But it's like taking a cage or fencing and putting on the back of a John Deere tractor and then dragging it. That would drag it back in, correct? I mean, I get what you're saying, the wind caused the damage, but where's our neglect on this $55,000 that we're sitting here now on?
I don't think there's any neglect, Councilman Williams. I think that it's just when the fields are not being used and they're dry and the winds come about, they blow onto the grass.
Is our staff that we have currently up there working all year long or just certain times?
Certain times.
Okay. How many part-time staff out of the 8 staff parks guys you have, how many are part-time?
3.
So really, you only have 5 full-time and 3 part-time.
No, sir. If I answered that incorrectly, I apologize. We have 3 part-time and 8 full-time.
Oh, so you have 11 total.
That is correct, and the part-time are 20 hours a day, or a week.
And you still need additional 4 more part-time or permanent?
Permanent.
You're almost back at that original number a long time ago at 16. That's what you used to have.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Noble.
Just to follow on with what Councilman Williams was talking about, the 8 staff, the 3 part-time, and then an additional 4 to 6 would help you. With the 4 to 6, what else would you be able to accomplish with 4 to 6 more staff members?
Well, there's areas that we really don't focus on, and I'll pretty much be clear, is the landscape behind Walmart. Behind Food for Less. We get to that when it becomes a nuisance. The other areas are a lot of landscape areas around town, but the community has spoken loud enough that our parks are really not nice. So we put a lot of focus into our parks, but yet we don't have enough staff to address the other areas.
And to elaborate just a little bit more on what Mr. Alva was saying, our current staff is maintaining the infrastructure that we have. We're not improving. So whenever we add things, for example, First Street Bridge, we just added First Street Bridge, all that rock, beautiful, right? Someone's got to go in there and pick all the weeds and maintain that. We're not adding staff to it. So what happens is the Linwood overpass, the grade separation out there, the nice bridge out there, we're responsible for 3 sides of that. The county side looks amazing. Our side, not so much. It's because we don't have enough people to maintain it. What I asked whenever I first came into this role a little bit, I asked the park department to provide me the amount of staff that they have, the amount of staff hours that they have going out to every single park, and then and what does that entail? Like, what's your duties at each park? Currently, so they gave me the whole breakdown, and that's where the deficiency, and that's where Tommy comes up with the number 4 employees. Our hope is one day to be able to have enough staff to make improvements, and what I mean by that is pressure wash the restrooms every single day, not weekly, every day. We lock up the restrooms at night, so we split the shifts to where we have some staff work later on to where they can lock the bathrooms up at night, because whenever the park closes, instead of having it open, we lock it up and we clean them before we lock it. So the next morning, the staff's not going in there to a disaster and having to clean them, which just takes more time, to more neglect. Everything just keeps getting neglected. So that's our goal. And then the other thing is that we've talked about assigning certain staff members to each park. So, for example, it would be me and Councilman Williams working on Fogelson only. That's our park, that one in 8th Street. And we would just be dedicating all of our time there. So if there was an issue there, you would come talk to Councilman Williams, excuse me, and myself. So that's some of the things that we've been looking at trying to do. It's just we don't have enough staff. But that's part of the strategic plan we plan to bring to you guys in the future to address some of these things.
Thank you. Now, how hard would it be to increase those? First of all, how hard would it be to hire those 4 to 6 staff members? What qualifications would they need or have in order to?
So for the entry-level PSA 1 in parks, it preferably it would be nice if they have some irrigation experience and understand what plants that the city has out there, whether they're plants, shrubs, trees, and grass. It is desirable to have those understandings when we recruit, but at times, sometimes they just, based on the pay, we don't get that type of talent.
So it's really on-the-job training, basically.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you mentioned something about the some of the things that our staff members do behind Food for Less. Do we maintain something over there?
Yeah, so when that I call it the Kmart development. Whenever that development happened, there were some we call it crib walls. So whenever you drive in there, you'll see the banks. Whenever you just turn into where the gas station is, you look to your right, there's a steep wall, and it's like blocks that's kind of stacked, kind of funny in there. The city, back whenever the development was built, took on that responsibility to maintain that as part of an agreement that went with that developer. So the city is required to maintain that. If you drive by it now, originally, the way that thing is designed is it has plants that are supposed to be in there. And that's what actually helps hold that wall up. Well, all the plants are gone, they died, and now what we do is whenever there's an issue, some dirt's coming out or anything's coming, or weeds are growing, staff will go over there and maintain that whenever it gets bad enough.
Okay. Yeah, and my last question, do we have any other agreements out there that's similar to what you just mentioned?
Yeah, so there's, whenever we talk about parks, the reason why it's called open space is because the medians on Barstow Road, for example, that's our responsibility. The median on Rimrock is our responsibility. Even along those homes on Rimrock that go, like if you're driving, when we just went in there and redid it a couple of years ago. We put in rock and then put some bigger boulders, but it's in that retaining wall area, that planter, that's the city's responsibility. On Muriel, going up to the sports park, by those new homes, that new track, that development, that little landscape area on the side, that's the city's responsibility. So there's multiple things out there that are not just parks. City Hall, for example, is on their list. 3rd Street, that little pocket park, but then also Main Street right there, they clean that, all that area. So it's not just parks that they maintain. So whenever you think 8 employees, you think, oh, that should be good enough to maintain the parks, whenever he mentions how many parks we have. But there's a significant amount of open space that is out there that they have to maintain.
Got you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Noble. Councilmember Williams.
Mr. Eldred, do you remember the time where they moved parks and streets together to save money, to reduce the amount of employees, so we could save some money? It was back.
I remember when it happened. I don't know the reasoning behind it, as in I wasn't a part of those discussions on the purpose and the reasoning.
But you agree that they did move everybody together to, obviously, to save money. I mean, they used to have it separate.
Yes.
And I want to commend both of you for what you have done, understaffed, and for mistakes made at the past council. I'm not saying this last past council, but all of them, that they made a decision to move these employees and staff to save money. So again, heck of a job, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you. The question I have is the funding for parks and rec, the general fund. What was that budget? And then what is Measure Q? I don't expect you to answer it right now, but that, that's a question everybody asks, So how much are we spending from Measure Q to do, and what was our regular budget to begin with? And I would assume that when our new CM comes in, it's all a matter of funding. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So unfortunately, decisions have to be made on whether we have the money or not, whether it meets our needs or not. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hernandez. Mr. Alva, the pickleball courts, somebody posted on Facebook recently showing a mark, and as if it was damaged and as if it was done by a skater. Are we securing those at night?
So Recreation has their staff go in the morning to remove the locks so the community can enjoy it. Okay. And then at the end of their closing time, they send somebody back out and and re-secure it.
Okay,
But to police it throughout the day, I've caught skateboarders in there and removed them. And so has other pickleball players. They've had the courage to remove them as well. So there is damage being, or possible damage from the skaters.
okay. Thank you. That's all the requests I had to speak, so let's go ahead, and you were going to go on to your next presentation for Public Works.
So Public Works, we all know that we have a lot of buckled sidewalks in town, and based on thermal expansion, because we don't have enough trees that are causing this problem. But Public Works is trying to stay on top of these, but they're happening faster than we can repair them. Again, we are short-staffed. It is part of our seasonal schedule, and we try to do as many as we can. And along the way, sometimes we have to pivot to other responsibilities to assist other departments or change course of what we're doing for the better good. So we'll do our best in replacing the sidewalks. When we do replace them, after talking with Palm Springs and Las Vegas, what are they doing? They basically just replace them as well. But I've took the approach of when we remove them, that we place a double expansion joint on either side of the sidewalk, which provides more of a cushion. So there's more stretch, more forgiving when it expands and contracts. The potholes and the cracks, we based on the road conditions, yes, we do experience a lot of potholes. And based on the material that is the specifications has declined due to California standards. We're trying to stay on top of it. We have a pothole crew right now. It's the season for that, and it also extends the life of the roads moving forward. We're trying to address a lot of the parking lots. A few weeks ago, myself and Mr. Heldreth, we were looking at the front parking lot here, trying to see if we can make some improvements. But we also know that there's 3rd and Main. There's some ADA, some situations there for the handicap by the water fountain. But that's going to take some design from engineer. Upgrading the storm channels. I've tried to do as many as I can in year 22, but then the funding, we had to direct it in a different path. So right now, some of the storm channels, since we live on a hill and most of the drainage has to get to the river bottom, based on the size of the storm, it erodes the channels. Luckily, Mother Nature hasn't put Public Works in a position where we have to go in there with heavy equipment. So far, they're holding up, but at some point, again, we're going to have to go in there and upgrade some of the areas where we kind of missed the mark of slowing down the water, but we'll get there. The replace aging equipment, we're trying to stay compliant with CARB. We did have a few pieces of equipment that we've replaced. For instance, we replaced the skip loader and the backhoe. That made us compliant. And we still have one of the park's lawnmowers, which is the biggest lawnmower, that's putting us back on the radar. We hate to get rid of it because it's a 100-inch deck, but that's one of the ones that is falling short. The other one, pavement preservation projects. Hopefully we can start going down that path with some funding. And that's all I got.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams, questions for staff?
How many staff are you understaffed in Public Works?
Again, it would be 4 to start with.
Okay.
Right now, my other departments are short-staffed, so I have 2 employees out of streets. One is assisting in parks, and the other one is assisting in facility maintenance. So we're actually running at 8 staff in streets.
And you need 12
12 would be ideal to start to improve services.
So
yes.
you're 4 down in Parks and you're 4 down in Public Works.
Correct.
You're doing an excellent job being understaffed, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no other questions from council. We will move on to the Barstow Police Department.
Right. Open the floor to our interim police chief, Daniel Arthur.
Good evening, staff, or, council and the community present. My presentation will be pretty quick here for you. As you see on the screen in front of you, there's a lot of things that we were able to get accomplished during this our past 5-year strategic. We did pretty well with the officers, with hiring them. Our cars, as you all know, they get pretty abused. They're running constantly. But we're staying up on maintaining them and rotating them out as often as possible. We did hire a full-time police service assistant as well as a dispatcher, and we were fortunate to increase the training for some of the officers, more specialized training for detectives and as well as patrol. We do have the full-time drug and gang team. We call them the Crime Impact. We were not able to do the full-time Hope team, unfortunately. They're part-time, but we're still moving forward to correct that. As you see, obviously, there's a few other things that weren't added in the year 2020. With the year 2021, again, we added some more officers. We've updated the in-car video systems, the body cameras, our evidence tracking system that kind of coincides with the records management system. They were kind of one and the same with the technology with that. And we were able to get some covert investigative technologies kind of for like our investigative units to assist with them. And the renovation of the police department is moving forward. With this current fiscal year, we're just about done where we needed. There's a few things that are being wrapped up, and we plan on trying to request, obviously, additional funding in the future to wrap up the complete renovation. There are a few things that we weren't able to get accomplished, unfortunately, but that will be in the next 5-year strategic plan that we are working on right now to try to shore up all those misses. With that, I'll open to questions.
Thank you. Questions from staff? Councilmember Williams.
Chief, are you currently understaffed with your police officers?
Unfortunately, yes.
How many?
I believe 9. But we do have, right now, we do have 3 officers who are in backgrounds that are looking really good. We should be picking them up soon. And we have another stack of applicants that we're scheduling a testing process. We feel confident that we can close that gap fairly quickly this year, at least a good amount of it.
Are you still having police officers in districts?
Yeah, every officer has a beat, correct, yes.
Okay.
And we still make sure that patrol is staffed and they're covering their beat.
How's that working out with the residents and knowing those officers? I mean, what was the reasoning to make them in districts?
Well, the biggest thing is, I mean, with the police, I was always trained when it came to the beat system, we would call it the SARA model, right? It's the scan, analyze, respond, and then reassessed. And you're able to do that on I think a more appropriate or positive scale when you actually have officers assigned to specific beats. They're owned to that beat. They have it's not like they can just move on to another call. So you know what I mean? And put on maybe another officer to do that. So when they're assigned to a specific beat, they need to resolve that problem. And from us, that's been a better model to go to. And we've been getting, from what the feedback I've heard, we've been getting more positive results from the citizens.
Just recently, we walked the Food for Less area, and you brought the officer in for that that section or that district. I thought it was very well done. I thought the staff, the people enjoyed it. are you getting good response back from the district, from having officers in the districts where the citizens understand who that officer is, they see him a lot?
Yes, and that's kind of the whole, the point of having the beat system is, and we encourage the officers during their downtimes to go out and make contact with business owners in their district. And even driving through the neighborhoods, we've had officers who stop and shoot basketball with the kids and throw the football around.
I thought that worked out very well, that people understand. So the citizens need to understand that their district officers are there to serve them, to get to understand them and know them. Do you rotate these officers?
Every year they're assigned, so we have like a shift scramble. So they're usually assigned with the same group for pretty much the entire year. And once they're assigned to that specific beat, at least for that year, they're focused on that beat.
And I think you should be commended on that. That's exactly what we need, long-term officers in districts serving our community. Cost recovery, are you using insurance to do any cost recoveries for calls you're going out on, anything like that? Or is there anything for you to get that?
That's not what we,
Okay.
Our fund is all taxes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Mayor Pro Tem Rose.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Chief, you mentioned that you're understaffed by 9.
Correct.
Are these positions that you're currently in the process of filling, and we hope that they are filled, are they budgeted?
Yes, they are budgeted. It was just unfortunate from people retiring, as well as just the unfortunate reality in our business. Just like with fire, you have people who lateral to other agencies for various reasons. But we are in the process. We have a recruitment team who goes out frequently throughout the year through many different locations throughout Southern California to recruit. And like I said, right now we have 3 who are looking really, really good. We're really close to offering them conditionals. And then we have another stack, I think it was about 15 or 20 applicants that we'll be scheduling for the written test to start the whole process.
So again, I apologize, go ahead.
I was just saying, we feel confident that we can close that gap, I think, pretty significantly. I would say out of this year, I feel confident we can get 6 to 7 people hired.
6 to 7, thank you. So out of Measure Q, if my calculations are correct, 1 detective, 12 officers, 3 patrol, let me back up. 1 detective, 12 officers, 1 dispatcher, 1 assistant. So we have 15 total that Measure Q has funded from the inception of Measure Q. Are my calculations correct?
I believe that's accurate.
For some reason, I think it's only 8, 3, and 1.
So I believe what we're seeing is the filling of vacant positions happening over the course of several years. Because funded through Measure Q, we have 8 officers, 3 dispatch, and 1 police services assistant. And that's laid out on page 12 of the slides. That is the authorized budget as of this year. Moving forward, that may change, given our budget periods. But I also have a slide that shows the authorized positions over the course of the years, so since Measure Q was adopted through today.
Okay, so if I'm looking at on page 7, in 2019, we added 8 officers.
Correct.
But if I look at 2021, added 4 officers. So you're saying that 4 of those, 2 of those may have replaced some of the 8?
That is, from my understanding, we have 8 officers budgeted in Measure Q. So the 4 additional officers, if they were added, they were not added to the Measure Q side, or they were replacing 4 officers that had already vacated.
That makes more sense, and in future, maybe that's how it should say that these 4 replaced the original 8, so that it doesn't look like we've hired 12 officers.
I think what happened was there was an original plan to add 4 additional more officers on top of the 8, but that plan didn't come to fruition in 2021. That may be part of the reassessment for the next 5-year plan.
But the check says that we've added 4.
Correct. This was the information I was given today, but there may be some misunderstanding.
I apologize.
So is that correct, that 4, maybe 2 of these replaced the 8 original
It's potentially, yes, I'd have to look. I don't have I obviously have my list of my officers, but I don't know which one specifically right now offhand.
And there's no need to apologize. It's just, it looks like we have 12 officers, just looking at this sheet, that we've hired out of Measure Q. And that's what it looks like to me, so, we're all
Right.
getting there together, right? Okay. So, I do have a question about the renovation of the police department. What was the cost to renovate the police department? And was that, I don't believe that was part of the Measure Q, yes, safety, but I don't believe that the renovation was part of the Measure Q, that the voters said, yeah, we're going to renovate the offices.
Yeah, no, there were several funds that were used for renovation for the station. I believe a small portion of that did come from Measure Q, but I believe what happened was there was budget that was intended for use of something else that was amended to go to cover the cost of the renovation. But there were, I believe, 3 funds that were involved in participating in the cover.
So what was the cost out of Measure Q?
I do not have that information in front of me. I'd have to come back with that.
And when can you come back on that? I mean, of course,
I
I
can actually
can't
send-
ask her, but maybe through our city manager, that we can, find out what the cost of the renovation that came out of Measure Q.
We can send council an email brief
Correct.
of that by the end of the week, probably.
And I would need more than just me asking. I would need somebody else to support that. I don't direct just myself.
I'll give you a second.
Thank you. And I guess it would be important to know the total cost of the renovations. Not that they weren't needed, but it's nice to know what it costs and what actually came out of Measure Q. Because I don't remember, was there a point in time when those numbers came to the council and we approved the cost of the renovation?
That project took place over the course of 2 fiscal years. It was actually in process when I came in. So I believe there was an original ask probably 2 budget cycles ago, and then it was a work in progress over the course of the last fiscal year. So I'm not exactly sure what the original ask was or when that took place, but I do know that we have tracked it as an asset through the course of the completion, and it's not quite yet all the way complete.
And my next question would be, it was my understanding that we did it in-house.
Correct.
And so we saved a lot of money. But my question would be, we had to get permits, correct? We had to, just because it's our house, we still need permits. And we needed qualifying, not qualifying, but certified electricians and all of those experts to do these renovations. And if that's the case, that would have been part of the cost, correct?
If that was needed, yes, that would have been part of the cost. I'm not exactly sure how many contractors were hired outside of the city for specific jobs, or if we do have staff here that are certified to complete those tasks. I believe we might have that in-house. I leave that up to Mr. Helder's
Let me jump in on
side.
a couple of points, if I may, Mayor and Council. So one note is we are exempt from some of our own permit requirements. Because it's a city facility, it's a government facility, we don't need to go, for example, to the Planning Commission for permits, because the Planning Commission ultimately reports to the council, and the council runs the city. But we are, of course, required to comply with ADA, certain other public access requirements, public facilities requirements for strength and earthquake and so forth. All, to my knowledge, all requirements were met in the course of the rebuild, or not rebuild, but renovation, thank you. And I think staff could put together a briefing with the cost information, the information on the contracting details, which I don't think anyone in this room right now has, and the licenses, et cetera. That can be provided to staff, or to the council, once it's put together by staff.
And thank you, Matthew, or Mr. Summers, for that, and that's fair enough. But I think that we're all interested in, because the discussion is Measure Q, on what was paid out of Measure Q. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you. On the original strategy plan, it was to conduct a feasibility study to build a new police station. So that was part of the strategy. So My question is, was it ever budgeted? Because I don't ever recall giving approval for a renovation, whether it is for the city or the police department. And so that's my question. When were we informed, or was it just part of the budgeting regarding, because it was a Measure Q about the feasibility study for the police station?
So my understanding, I mean, this happened 2.5 years ago, approximately. Mr. Hopkins was the city manager at the time. I do not know exactly how the budget came to fruition, all those things. I just know, to answer some of those questions previously as well, your building department is certified inspectors to review and to oversee construction and all that. We also have general contractors on staff. You have a good group of team in your building department. We actually had Brad come out because we ran into an issue with a structural issue. So fully had the engineering team and the building department reviewing everything that was happening.
But we don't
the
know
budget,
how
I
how
cannot
and
tell
why.
you. No,
Okay.
no, ma'am.
Okay,
We'll
thank you.
confirm all of that if I could jump in briefly. But
So-
the recollection is that it was inherent in the budget approval by the council, which may have been in the interregnum when you weren't on the council in that 2-year gap. But the other counts, some of the other members in the room would have been on the council. I believe it may have been inherent in the budget approval, but not a separate specific vote just on that project that night. But I think staff needs to confirm all the information and come back with that information, including how much of what was spent came from Measure Q, which is a number I don't think anyone right
And
now
that's the
has,
bottom line.
but
How
can come
much,
back with.
yeah, how much came from Measure Q when it wasn't a Measure Q item? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hernandez. Councilmember Williams.
Out of the new officers that are being looked at, are any of those from our current, now, again, the POW or the Explorer program, are any of those officers coming out of that?
No.
Why not?
Are you?
I mean, our explorers are serving our, we bring them in there. Are we looking at those explorers to be future police officers? Absolutely.
Absolutely. We've actually hired several former explorers
Okay.
from our department just at this particular time.
Okay, great.
The ones who are currently in the background process are not part of the
Okay,
Explorer
but
program.
we have hired our explorers in the past to be police officers.
Absolutely.
Great, great. Okay. Did the cost to do the upgrades to the facility, to the police department, did that go to the Measure Q commissioners? Is that on their line items to see? When Measure Q has their budgets, their financials, is that on there?
So if there were costs that were associated to the renovation, it would have been detailed into the police division over the course of the Measure Q workshops. So I don't have any on this quarter here because we haven't done anything in the renovations right now. But in past quarters, there would be, if there were cost, it would be in there.
I'd like to see those costs. I want to see if that transparency to the Measure Q commissioners to approve or to sign off on those costs.
I believe we're gonna, it sounds like we're gonna bring something back.
Okay.
That's gonna detail all of that information.
All right, thank you so much.
And if I could also jump in, a clarification, as discussed last time, the Measure Q commissioners do not approve expenses. The council, the elected council approves the expenses. But the Measure Q commission does review and comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Mayor Pro Tem Rose.
Thank you. So when we do get that report with the costs, it's my understanding that we'll get the costs that affected Measure Q for the renovations. And that would include the salaries, if there were any salaries that, because if employee A, B, and C were working on the renovations, were their salaries also being paid out of Measure Q while they were doing the renovations? So I'm just saying, would that include it? If they are, I think that we have a right to know if their salaries were also being taken out of Measure Q while they were doing the renovations. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no more requests to speak on that item, and we're moving on to the budget. Ms. Harris will be taking that one.
All right. Okay. So getting into the budget details, this year, Measure Q, 2025 fiscal year, the anticipated revenue was $10,100,000. Of course, this is the reflection of the budget as it stands right now. There has not been any mid-year adjustments. That will be coming back to us when we do a mid-year analysis in the next couple of months. So right now, these numbers are based on the original budget that was adopted at 2025 with any other approved items that have come through council during the course of the first 6 months this fiscal year. We'll go into further detail about the expenditures by category, but as you see here, the category for police is $3,693,000. Fire was $6,164,000. That does include the cost of the approved fire engine for this fiscal year. Streets was $2,040,000. Parks, $426,000. Youth and seniors, $200,000, and the other city services, which we'll go into detail about what that includes in a later slide, of $1,196,000 and change. So that brings our expected expenditures for this fiscal year, as you see, to $13,721,000. But there is just over $3 million of one-time cost that have been included in this year's fiscal budget. So this decrease to fund balance was a deliberate item that was approved by council when this was brought to budget for this 25 fiscal year. So just to show kind of a pie chart of how these categories are split amongst all of the authorized categories. So we have police, which receives about 27% of the Measure Q budget. Excuse me. Fire is 45%, and of course this number is slightly inflated for this year because of the cost of the fire truck that's included. Streets at 15%, parks is 3%, and youth and seniors, of course, is 1%, and the other city services is 9%. So referring to the breakout of how these costs, these expenditures are impacting the Measure Q budget for this year, I took the liberty of breaking this out by personnel so that we can actually see the costs. So this is directly salaries and benefits for all of our categories, so between fire, police, and everything else. We are spending just over $7 million in personnel cost itself. Now, keep in mind that these salaries are just budgeted, these are authorized budgeted positions for Measure Q. These do not include any contractors' amounts or professional services or anything of that nature. It's just the authorized positions that have been budgeted to Measure Q. We did have $3,400,000 in one-time cost. $850,000 of those are the park improvements that Mr. Alva had walked us through earlier. The Type 1 and Type 3 fire engine plus some breathing apparatus equipment for fire has been included in Measure Q for this year. There's an upgrade to the 911 dispatch center that has not begun yet, and that could potentially be carried forward into the next fiscal year. But that's, of course, a one-time cost. Body-worn cameras, we have $47,000 that was budgeted in Measure Q this year for police. And then there were two heavy equipment items that were purchased in Measure Q. I believe it was the wheel loader and a utility truck for $452,000 for this fiscal year. The standard cost are those costs that support the operations of those things that come from Measure Q. So there is some employee training, so those officers and fire personnel that are budgeted to Measure Q, their training will also come from Measure Q. There are some technical supplies, so for streets and, things that they need, so we'll say concrete and pothole mixtures or things like that that are budgeted in Measure Q projects. Services, again, that includes any contract services that we have that are going for streets or for fire or for PD. Community promotions, so that's our 4th of July celebration, our Christmas events, military banners, things of that nature. Capital equipment, so any purchases or leases that we have. So for instance, the PD vehicles come from that line. The cost allocation, Mr. Williams, that's that $508,000. That's detailed there for the standard cost, so that's annual. And then, of course, the utilities. And so those utilities are for any Measure Q budgeted department. So I believe a lot of this is for the parks and sports park in particular. That is what makes up our budget of $13,721,000 for this fiscal year. So our fund balance at the beginning of this fiscal year was $8.5 million. Add to that our estimate projected revenue for this year. And then when you look at the expenditures that we've planned to come from Measure Q for this year, that will leave us with $4.9 million of fund balance at the end of this fiscal year. And of course, this is an estimate based on these projections. If something were to change, costs come in higher, lower, revenue comes in higher, lower, this of course would change as well. So just a breakout of those expenditure categories. I believe we spoke about this briefly earlier. Under the police section, we have 8 budgeted officers, 3 dispatch, 1 police services assistant, and that budget for salaries and benefits was $2.4 million. The operations that were budgeted on Measure Q include things such as vehicle maintenance, fuel cost, ammunition, and a few of those PD improvements. So that's where we see possibly some of the renovation cost is in that line, and that's $766,000. And then capital equipment. So we have our vehicle leases and some equipment leases. I believe our body-worn camera lease is part of this as well. Fire expenditures, we have 3 battalion chiefs, 6 firefighter paramedics, and 1 arson investigator that is budgeted from Measure Q at $2.4 million. And the operations, of course, include the lease from, I believe this is just the purchase of the refurbished equipment. We have medical training and supplies here and equipment testing. So these are all of the day-to-day items that are needed in the operations for the fire department. The capital equipment, of course, that includes the purchase of that fire truck. We had a generator purchased this year. I believe, was that for a fire station? Fire station 366. Okay. And of course, the compressors and containers for the breathing apparatus. And this also includes the liability insurance on all the equipment. So for streets, and this also includes the fleet side, we have the 2 PSAs and the 1 fleet mechanic at $282,000. Operations, technical supplies, building repairs, park improvements, and that's the big line item, the $850,000 for the park improvements. It's 1.3, and then capital equipment, as I spoke of earlier, there's that wheel loader, and I misspoke, I said a utility truck, but it was a dump truck. And then there's various other rentals that happen for streets repairs throughout the course of the year. Parks expenditures. So the $43,000 repairs and maintenance, that's just on the facilities that are at the parks, those buildings. The Henderson Pool, and then Sports Park, of course, has probably the largest chunk because I believe we did the largest amount of work at the sports park for this fiscal year. We did a lot of updating on the fields and things of that nature, and of course the utility bills are a portion of this cost as well. Youth programs and senior programs. We have this budget of the $150,000, and of course for the $50,000 for seniors. These 2 budgets, however, do not usually get used to their fullest capacity. I believe that the turf tank and the paint for fields is customary on the youth side, and we also support football equipment. But if we refer to the cost in your Measure Q revenues and expenditure summary, there's a breakdown on the line items on what's involved in those costs. And if you turn to page 3 at the, oh, no, that's not it. It's page 2, looking for youth and, oh, there we go. So at the bottom of page 2 in the purple section, you see the youth program with a budget of 150 and the youth and the seniors for the 50,000. You can see at this time, we've spent maybe just under 13,000 for the youth, and it looks like about 1,500 on seniors. Now, this is basically a reflection of having no programs or no request for purchasing coming to us. So I believe that there may be some discussion on creating more programs in this area, but this is something we can certainly talk about during the next budget period. All right, and so for other city services, this includes the, so we have 0.4% of an IT coordinator, and this person is responsible for keeping the computers online that are in the PD cars, doing any, upgrading or retrofitting at the police station or in the fire station, wherever it may be needed on the Measure Q departments. So this has been budgeted annually. On the operation side, so our risk insurance for any departments that are Measure Q funded is budgeted for Measure Q. The audit expense, of course, we are required to provide an audit report for the Measure Q funds, and this is the cost of that service. Debt service, that includes unfunded liability. So all of our CalPERS employees that are budgeted a Measure Q, this pays for a portion of their pension costs. The cost allocation, that $508,000 is it's a cost allocation plan that was created by a third-party consultant who actually goes into all of these departments and does an analysis on supportive services. So whatever the administrative cost is for the city itself to have these funds and support these other departments, it is calculated, and that is the recommended amount that this service has come up with to support the cost of having Measure Q funds for the city. So in other terms, it basically means that if there's a Measure Q item that needs to be brought to council, it needs to go through the city manager for analysis, or it needs to come through a certain department for staff report. All of those things are weighted. The time is calculated, and it's averaged over the course of a fiscal year. And so this cost allocation plan is actually updated every so often, so every 2 to 3 years. We have the service come back and do another analysis to make sure that this is adequate. And then, of course, we have our community promotional fund. So the budget for everything in the community promotional fund, sans the youth and seniors, is $232,000. So everything from the military banners to the Christmas event to the 4th of July. Then we have the Harvey House, and I believe the $122,000 is solely for the cost of building maintenance and utilities. This is also displayed on your summary, but there's no detail. I've also included detail behind the numbers here, but I know that you all have not had enough time to kind of go through all of those details. But I am available if you have any questions regarding those amounts. But just before we conclude, I took the liberty of creating this chart here that basically shows our 5-year trend of Measure Q. And this shows all of the expenditures we've had over the course of 5 years, including revenues. So the green line that you see at the top is the trend line for revenues over the course of the 5 years. Of course, Measure Q was adopted in 2019, and so I believe 2020 was basically the first year that some of these costs were coming online. So as you can see, there wasn't a lot of revenue in that year, and we didn't do a lot of expending that year as well. But as the years go on, what I wanted to highlight is that year over year, we actually underspent Measure Q to the point that we created a fund balance over these first 3 years. We did not really get into spending from fund balance until last fiscal year. So just to look at that detail, and I believe this kind of shows a better picture, revenues are the green line here at the top between year 2020 all the way out through 2025. And the expenditures by category are what are laid out below. And the fund balance, the increase or decrease to fund balance over the years is displayed there at the bottom. So as you can see, the first year, the first full year of Measure Q, we were able to increase the fund balance by $4.4 million. And so forth and so on until we get into more recent years. Now, 2025, of course, is still in mid-swing. So we have not received the revenues to offset some of these costs as of yet, but that will change. But as you can see, the first 3 years are where we kind of developed or matured the fund balance that's in Measure Q. So I believe this kind of gives a good picture of how we got to where we are today. This shows the adopted positions that we had from the adoption of Measure Q all the way up through today. And there hasn't been a lot of change in this position. There were some in the earlier years that were funded and then unfunded. But over the course of the last few years, this has remained pretty consistent. And this shows how many staff we had in each department that are budgeted in Measure Q. And I believe currently we have no staff under the city manager's office, none from community development. Community services, we just have the street maintenance PSAs and the fleet mechanic. And then, of course, the 8 officers, the 3 dispatchers, and the 1 police service assistant, the battalion chief, and the paramedics, and then we have the arson investigator. So we have 25.4 personnel budgeted in Measure Q as of today. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Councilmember Williams.
I wish we would have taken slide by slide. There was so much there. I think I'm lost now. I'm gonna do the best I can here. Do we have a breakdown of the $508,000 per item to make sure that it matches the $508,000?
I did not bring that with me tonight, no. There
You
isn't.
have it?
We do have it, yes.
Oh, I'm gonna look, I'm
Yes.
gonna need that one, I tell you. It should have been here in this slide.
I'll give you a second to get that.
Thank you. Someone explain to me how we're $3 million over in Measure Q, that we went in debt in 24, 25. What caused that over expenditure?
So for this fiscal year, we actually planned let me go back to,
Page 8.
it was page, yes.
Yeah, 10 million projected revenue, that's what's
Right.
coming in. But your 13 million total expenditures
Right.
and the fund balance, you're over by 3,621,000.
So there was intentional budgeting for this fiscal year of one-time cost. If you look at page 10, in the center of page 10, everything from park improvements down to the streets trucks, those are one-time costs that we budgeted this fiscal year to use what we identified as surplus funds in Measure Q.
Okay.
Those we discussed during the course of the budget period for this year. And council agreed that we would move forward in purchasing some of these things just as a one-time thing.
Did we know that we were going to go in debt over those decisions?
So I don't necessarily refer to this as going into debt. I think
I
it's.
do. I
it's-
see a negative $3 million. I say that's debt.
So what we did intentionally is we used fund balance. So it's similar to, you know, if you get paid and you have $100 left over on your check, you don't use it all, but maybe, you know, in the next couple of weeks, you need a new something broke. You will use that $100, even though it's not coming out of your current paycheck, it was from a paycheck ago. So that's basically what we've done here. We said we have this money that we've kind of stored up, and we're gonna use it for something specifically in the future.
With the finance of the fire truck that we decided to pay cash on, would that help you tremendously in some of the debt we have right now?
So it would decrease the one-time cost that you see here in this line item by the $1.7 million. So you would be looking at just under 2.4, so yeah, it would be just like $1.8 million instead of 3.4.
You would have those funds available to do more things for the citizens, correct?
Of course, yes, those funds could be programmed to do a number of things, our streets programs, or we can continue to take care of our parks like we've been doing, any number of things.
I'd like to second to bring that specific plan back to the next agenda council meeting.
Just for clarification, the vote on that was 3-2. It would have to have been another yes vote, correct? So it would have to be the Mayor Pro Tem or Councilmember.
Right, under
Jimenez.
Rosenberg's, to revisit a decision like that was made, we need somebody in the majority to join that second.
You know, I would be the one, one of two others that would second, but I think that I need a little more information to make that second, Councilman Williams. I think right now I'm not ready to make it because I would like more information, because this Measure Q is like a football game. And when it started, the coach kept in all the high-paid players, didn't make any adjustments, and then added additional players at high costs and didn't make any adjustments. This is how I see it.
Okay,
So I can't give the second right
thank,
now.
thank you.
I apologize.
All right.
Continue, please.
I just want to confirm in front of everybody tonight that the 1.7 million is needed in order to enhance residents' safety or whatever we use it for, correct?
Correct. So I believe I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, you know, we would be purchasing the fire truck. We would still have access to the
Right.
fire truck and be able to service the community with it. But in addition to having the fire truck, we would be able to use those funds today for other projects, such as streets or parks or something else of that nature. So we would be getting both items covered, or both needs met with that financing.
Okay, disappointing. On the body cams, we are currently, let's go back to our fuel for our police vehicles. It's broken out in general fund and Measure Q funds, correct?
Correct.
Why, before the city attorney tells me that it's all general fund, why are you breaking those two funds out separately?
So we have purchased vehicles with Measure Q dollars.
Okay.
Those particular vehicles will be fueled by Measure Q dollars.
Okay.
They will be repaired by Measure Q dollars. And we track all of that cost specifically so that we can show that Measure Q is being used on what it was voted for.
When the firefighters have turnout gears they rent, do they rent those on Measure Q and general fund, or is it all under Measure Q?
So the fire personnel that is budgeted in Measure Q, their cost for equipment would be part of the Measure Q budget as well.
Separated.
Correct.
Now comes my question. Why were the body cams for the police department all done on Measure Q? The general funded officers should have been general funded, and the Measure Q officers should have been funded for those body cams.
So this is not the entire cost of the body worn cameras. This is actually a portion of the cost. I believe that cost came in at around 70,000 or 74,000 for this year. So this is part and parcel of the body worn cameras.
So this particular body cameras of $47,000, that came out of Measure Q.
This portion of it came from Measure Q, yes. There's
So
another
the next portion will be out of general fund.
Correct.
Is 47,000 equal the amount of officers we have in Measure Q?
I believe it was broken out on the invoice, so yes, I believe it matched the number of officers.
How many officers we have in Measure Q?
8.
So 8 officers on body cams will cost us $47,000.
Yes, and this is for
How many general fund officers do we have?
the rest of the police department.
Well,
So
I don't know.
I'm not 100% certain. I think it was like 19 more or 20?
30?
We really don't. Do we need to disclose that to the public?
The total number is public, but not all the assignments.
May I continue? So, it bothers me that we separate the fuel. It bothers me we separate Measure Q. I keep hearing it's general fund, don't worry about it. We can do what we want to do about it. Yet, on paper, we break it out separately. That should bother all of us. I mean, we do it with the employees, but when it comes time for one, I'm not saying the police officers don't deserve the body cams. They do. Just do it correctly. Let's do it general fund, and let's do it Measure Q funded.
That-
And that's what we're doing, right? You're saying that this 47,000 is only Measure Q only?
Correct.
Okay. And what's the breakdown per camera?
I don't have that in front of me. I mean, if
Okay.
you want me to do the math,
Maybe I'll get an appointment. We'll sit down together. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Noble.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, just wanted to go back to the youth and senior expedition when we talk about the 150 and 50,000 that is broken down for Measure Q. And we talk about the football fields at Stringham Park, and that's really the only football field that we have, correct? Have we ever looked at or thought about looking at purchasing a field, actually new field, turf, bleachers, all that good stuff? Have we ever looked at that? Based on the money that we're spending yearly for grass and water and everything else that is happening.
Would you like for me to answer that?
Either or.
I'll answer a piece of it, and then I'll defer to Tommy. But I know that the reason why we haven't done significant improvements at that park is because the school district owns it. So that's why, and we just have an MOU to maintain it. But as far as purchasing, I mean, I think there's multiple options out there. Like we can convert H3 soccer fields potentially to a football. You know, there's different things. It's just that we'd have to do a whole analysis on that of usage and different things. But I'll let Tom.
So I remember back in maybe 2012, 2010, that the school district was interested into selling the parcel next door east of Stringham Park or Pitcher Park. They were interested in selling it. I wasn't part of those conversations, but I guess the city was in the position to purchase the property next door to the Stringham Park.
Yeah, and that's my question, because I knew we were in the discussion to do that, but where did it fall off the radar? Because we've been talking about this for a few years now.
I wasn't a part of all those discussions, but I do recall that the school district came up with a price for the property. It was $300,000. And Mr. Merrill was doing the survey on that to show exactly where we would split the property, because it's actually one parcel. And so Mr. Merrill was showing like, okay, we'll do it at the bottom of the steps or top of steps like that. So he did all that work. And then what I recall is that the city was trying to get a grant for that big project. And we were trying to use the grant money to pay for the school or pay for the property from the school district instead of just purchasing the property outright. So whenever the grant didn't move forward, to my knowledge, we stopped. But I wasn't a part of all of the conversations, so there might be other things apart in that.
All right, thank you. My other question, there was a conversation about a veterans wall some time ago. Have we relooked at that? Some type of veteran wall for those that are veterans, not necessarily those veterans that have passed on.
I was not aware, but I'll get with, unless Tommy knows about it, but we'll get together and go over it to try to bring that back.
Yeah, I will entertain any conversations for a veterans wall, but again, just like Mr. Haldreth, I am unaware of a veterans wall at this time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Noble. Councilmember Williams, questions?
We do have a veterans wall. We put it up ourselves. It's made with all the veterans who served in Barstow. It's on the field. It's a metal plaque that we put up. So that is done. Getting back to the park, when we applied for the grant on that park, we didn't own the property. Is that correct? One of the stipulations for that grant that we met all the criteria in that area, correct? 100%. Because we didn't buy that property, we didn't get that grant. Because we didn't own it. That past council lost an $8 million park that they could have had down there because they refused to spend $300,000 on the park. Is that a fact?
I don't know all the facts, but I do know that it came before council for them to authorize the spending of the money, yes.
If they would have bought the park, they would have been able to win that grant. But because they didn't own it, they didn't have a chance on the grant, correct?
Potentially. I wasn't a part of that grant. It was Domingo, but yes, if we didn't own it, then, and it was a requirement for us to own it to receive the grant, then of course we would not have been awarded because we didn't buy it.
It was a poor decision on the past council to not buy that property to cost you an $8 million park that now Apple Valley has won, and it's a beautiful park.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Mayor Pro Tem Rose.
Thank you, Mayor. So my questions would be under Measure Q for the police expenditures. I know that we are in the process, if we have not already hired at least one police officer for animal control.
That would be something separate. So there's an animal control officer, but they are under a separate budget than just the police.
That was my question,
Okay,
is
yes.
that going to be funded under Measure Q?
No, that will be a general fund.
Thank you. My next question, let me get there. So this is youth and senior expenditures. It was my understanding that the council had directed our Mr. Espinoza to meet with the seniors center, now known as Jeff Eason Senior Center, to speak to their board so that they were aware of Measure Q funds, because Mr. Eason Senior had mentioned that they really didn't know how to go about this. Are you aware if the city has met with them and if there's ongoing conversations?
So just today, I had a conversation with Maribel Hernandez about participating in some of the meetings at the senior center. I believe that activity has just recently started. So I know that we do have staff that are participating, and hopefully, you know, there will be questions that come from those meetings and that we can facilitate some of the needs that they have.
And part of those discussions would be, this is the process, this is how you request the funds, and these are this is the criteria?
Yes.
The same for the youth. So I love the fact that Measure Q supports the football equipment. But I also have been told through the years with Measure Q that the other sports, i.e. baseball, softball, soccer, that they would like to have the same opportunity. And are we meeting regularly with them in regards to Measure Q funds and what's available to them?
So I'm not part of that conversation, but I believe our parks manager or supervisor is facilitating some of the youth meetings. I don't know if they're having conversations about the availability of funds, but I can discuss that with her tomorrow. Let's see.
I just would, would like to know if that, if that's the plan so that they take advantage of the funds that's available to them.
Excuse me, but I recall talking to her last week about Ms. Phillips, talking to her about it, and she is, I believe we're meeting this week to go over, because the cutoff is on Friday for all the youth sports to submit their applications, I guess. And so a lot of that is like field rental fees, all that. So she's finalizing that right now. And so then I believe she'll be presenting it to council at the next council meeting or the following in March. She'll be able to give you a presentation on that. But that would be going into effect. All the applications were coming in and we needed to review them.
My question is it the norm that, let's say I'm the president of softball, and I'm applying for Measure Q funds for the use of the fields to offset the cost of the fields and the lights. Is it the norm for the city to say, well, we would like to know how much you spent on a uniform? That's dependent on how much we're going to give you. I want to say that if we've raised the funds to buy uniforms and we choose to go with the Jordache versus the less than Jordache brand, that's paid within our organizational budget, and that the city should not be encroaching in that. But are we encroaching to find out how much they're spending on uniforms before we give them Measure Q funds?
I wasn't a part of those conversations, but I was approached by someone saying that they were asked to provide how much they spent on uniforms. That is not appropriate, and we will address that.
Thank you. So it's not the norm.
No, it is not.
Thank you. Moving on to I'm on page 17. You've already answered the insurance risk management. The Harvey House, $122,000. This is out of Measure Q. What are we paying for what is the cost? What is 122? What's the breakdown of that cost?
So in order to answer that question for you, I'd have to go into the detail that I provided for you. And the packet is pretty extensive, but I believe I can find it pretty quickly here. Let's see. Sports Park. Let's see. Page 23. Yes, okay, so page 23 of your expenditure status report. it details all of the expenditures that are part of that 122,000. So we have supplies, which are technical supplies, fees and services, electricity, natural gas, and water. As far as what exactly the fees and services are, I would have to go deeper in detail in the system, and I can give you an email, or I can include that in a later correspondence.
Yeah, later correspondence would be fine. Because like the technical supplies, 13,000, what technical supplies are we providing? And again, going to the fees and services was that I don't see any employees on this.
No, there would not be any employees for the Harvey House.
Okay. So my question would be, I know that we lowered the rental fee for the Harvey House so that we could see some revenue. Are we seeing any revenue so far?
This is just the expenditure side. So the revenue side, I do not have the Harvey House specifically detailed. I just brought the Measure Q, which is the sales tax dollars. That, again, I could bring you further information on in a later correspondence.
Thank you, because I really am curious about the fees and services. I appreciate that. Moving on to I think that's it for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Hernandez. Just go back.
When did we come up with the budget for the seniors, that 50,000 amount?
I believe that was early in my tenure. There was a lower amount that we went back and saw when the lower amount was created, and I believe that was during COVID, that they had reduced the budget. And so we were requested to increase it back to the 50,000 rate. I want to say it was during the mid-year of last fiscal year.
Okay. No, I thought it was interesting what was under it for tap and stretching, and I don't.
That was just an example of some of the
good.
costs. Yeah.
Oh, good, because my understanding Park and Rec does that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm glad that because that was a question, had someone gone out to the senior center and asked what their interests are? Because unfortunately, everybody who's a senior in this community does not attend the senior center. So in that context, I would like to see not just the senior center, board, not them making the unilateral decision for all the seniors. I think it should be put out also on Channel 6. And if they're interested, to go to the senior center and participate in a town hall type meeting. So we do address all the seniors. Because that, I'm glad we have a budget, but I would like to know that, to ensure that everyone's notified of the possibilities of the service. And maybe they can add to it, and maybe there'll be more seniors attending the center on that. And I'm glad you asked about the Harvey House, because that was not in the original strategic plan. And there's always been question, there's always a loss, and the reason for the Harvey House continuing is this community's commitment and how they look at it. So I would like to know, yes, what are the revenues as compared to what's coming out of Measure Q? That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Hernandez. Councilmember Williams.
Page 19. Others. Give me an example of what others is.
So that's the other city services. So if you look at page, hold on. That was where, page 17. So that was the audit expense, the debt service, the cost allocation, the risk management, insurance, and the Harvey House.
all of that equals up to about close to 3.5 million over the lifetime of Measure Q? I mean, I don't have a calculator in front of me, but just doing the numbers in my head is what I'm come up with.
Yeah, well, the cost allocation is the largest portion of that at the, well, back in these years, I believe it was 400,000, but in the last 2 fiscal years, it's the 508,000, so.
Okay, police, again, I don't have exact numbers. Estimated somewhere about $13 million we spent from the time, from 2020 to 2025, correct? Pretty
Looks
close?
like it.
Yep.
Yep.
Fire, 19 million. The reason why I'm bringing these two up is because people want to say, you know, some of these organizations aren't getting their fair share or they're not getting the money. But I tell you, at 19 million and 13 million, I think we've done a pretty decent job, right?
I would agree.
You agree? Chief, you agree? Because I keep hearing from some that says, what are we getting out of this? So the next time I get that question from someone in the department, I'm going to tell them 19 million and 13 million. Correct? Okay, just want to make sure. Streets. We spent $4 million from 2020 to 2025, correct?
Yeah, looks about right.
Mr. Holders, what would it take an average per year or the total of those years? Would you need 8 million or 10 million to do streets? Because 4 million is definitely not enough.
I'll take as much as you want to give me.
Right. But do you agree that $4 million won't even maintain a 1 year of streets?
No, I need a lot.
How much do you need? Estimated.
Rough estimate for the city is you're looking at probably to fix it. If I can get a $5 million a year out of Measure Q, I can make a good impact. To fix everything, give me 80 million probably.
What was that?
Yeah, the one report that we're getting updated from the Bucknam Group, I think it was 3.5, 4 years ago. They told us that we needed to spend 2.7 million just to maintain what we had.
Okay, so
this whenever we get the report back in June, I'm sure it's going to be probably, and that's not improving streets. That's
Right.
just maintaining.
So you're probably looking at
You're
4
probably
now
looking at almost 4 million probably,
Right.
and that's just to maintain
because of inflation.
and the deterioration of the roads.
Agreed.
So both.
But inflation has a lot to do with it as well, correct? I mean, things cost more now.
Oh yeah, so it might be more than 4 million.
Yeah, okay. So with that said, I am happy to see that the youth and the seniors were moved up, and I applaud that. So it's $200,000, correct?
Correct.
Great job. That was a smart move on your guys' part. So, just so the public knows, 13 and 19 million for your services tells you guys we care and we're trying to do the right thing and making sure those organizations are funded because they're super important to us. You guys agree? Everybody agree? Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Mayor Pro Tem Rose.
Thank you. I did fail to ask about the renovations of City Hall. Were they funded out of Measure Q?
I don't believe that was in this fiscal year. I would have to go back and take a look. But I believe it was prior fiscal year.
That it would have been?
That it would have hit the budget. Now, I'm not 100% sure if it was Measure Q or general fund, but I'd have to research that.
And the only reason I ask is, yes, we approve a budget, like for instance, community funds, we say 60,000, correct? We'll say 75,000 I see now for 4th of July. And hypothetically, 20,000 or 5,000 for Christmas.
Right.
But it's all combined in one fund. So when we spend 20,000 on a Christmas tree, we're not really saying, yes, spend that 20,000 on a Christmas tree. We're just saying that this is the funds that we budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we don't know about the renovations. Why is the Harvey House being funded out of Measure Q? Because I just really would like to know why. You know what, that budget decision was made during the course of the
fiscal year, I had a conversation with prior staff about putting the appropriate cost in the appropriate bucket. And there was some instruction given to say, you know, parks or any community spaces, any common spaces were appropriate for Measure Q. So that was the instruction that I was given, and that's what I followed.
And I appreciate your candor. Do you agree that we really need to go back to the basics? And because we can sit here and pick apart every line item in Measure Q. But do you agree that we should go back to the basics of what Measure Q was intended for, voted by our voters?
I believe that's what we've been attempting to follow. I know that there is some controversy on some of the items, and it would be helpful to kind of go through the idea of what council wants to see here solidly without any interpretation.
So hypothetical, if we went back to the basics and we pulled out an example, the Harvey House, that really should not be in Measure Q. Parks, yes. Harvey House, no. That if we pulled those and put them in a different bucket, that we would see, obviously, an increase in the Measure Q funds so that we don't have to borrow money to pay more money on for instance, the trucks. It'll cost us more money in the long run out of Measure Q on reserves that we don't even know, I mean, on the revenues that are anticipated revenues. But if we picked this apart and went back to the basics and threw, again, the Harvey House into a different bucket and whatever else that we can throw it back into the bucket, that it would help our Measure Q funds.
I would caution that whatever other buckets we're referring to may be impacted negatively as well. So
That was my next question. Could because we know that Measure Q has become our new, without Measure Q, our city potentially would be in the red.
It's highly likely, but I believe that through some hard decisions, that we would be in a better position.
So I think this council relies on our staff, to really analyze this and see where the perfect balance is.
Correct.
Because we don't want to deplete our general funds, but we also don't want to say, hey, we're paying taxes and we're in the red in Measure Q as well. We need to have those discussions, correct?
Oh, definitely.
And then bring it back to us.
Well,
And these are all fundamental policy choices for the council to consider when the next budget comes through. I think we're already in the beginning of the next budget cycle, but at heart, it's the council's decision what comes out of Measure Q, what comes out of the other general funds, what comes out of the special funds we have available. And staff's recommendations are just that, recommendations. Ultimately, it's up to the council.
And our intention is to, well, my intention, I plan to speak with the new CEM whenever they are on board. I've already stated this a couple times that I believe council should be more involved with the budgeting process, not necessarily preparing the budget, obviously, but every staff, department head should be here whenever that budget's going forward so that council can ask questions to that staff member. And what I mean by that is if we cut something, for example, because everyone's going to ask for the world. I mean, that's just the way it goes. But council has to make the tough decision to say no or yes. And what I think is it detrimental, fire chief, if we cut out your rebreathing apparatuses? Well, yes, it is. So he needs to be able to state that and answer those questions. So my intention, and Ms. Harris, we've talked about this a little bit, is that we would brief the new CM, and then the CM would make that decision on scheduling meetings and prioritizing, and then bringing that forward to council.
And that's what I would appreciate, because it's the prioritization of the staff to make those recommendations, but I, as a council member, should not say, take the Harvey House out of it without knowing the ramifications, correct? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Williams.
Mr. Hildreth, when a budget is passed and they come back and say we have a balanced budget, does that mean we're creating lots of issues by balancing the budget? We're cutting a lot of major things out. That's maybe a problem for us down the road for the future?
Not necessarily. Just so everyone, the way the budget works currently is every department head meets with the finance director. Sometimes the city manager would sit in on those. So every department head meets with the finance director. They're all responsible for their own budget, and they pretty much put down what they think that they to operate, and then the executive staff would, which is usually the CM or the finance director, would go through that and say, well, we're only receiving 10 million, and you're asking for 15, and so obviously we need to start cutting things.
And does this apply to the streets when you say you need $4 million and you come back with a balanced budget and you're only getting, $800,000?
Yeah. So yes, the short answer is yes.
Thank you.
But there's more to it, like with the CIP list and all those. But short answer, yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Okay, one final question. They mentioned the youth and funding the youth through the Measure Q. In our second meeting of this council, I had asked staff to start looking into the cost of to get a youth council back. Have we started that process?
Yes. So Maribel or Ms. Hernandez pulled the old budget back whenever we used to have the youth council, the youth advisory council, and I believe it was $1,500 a year. What I would like to do in moving forward is that I've asked the chief of police to have the RSO, the school resource officer, introduce us to the principal if for whatever reason we don't know him, and I would like the mayor or somebody to join us to speak with the principal, only for the reason of give him our ideas of what we think, and then he can bring the ASB team together. They can bring the students that are more involved at the high school. He's going to know them better than we do. And then we can actually have a conversation with them and say, how would you like to do a youth advisory council, those kinds of things, so we can get that information and then come back to council with an actual budget that's appropriate.
Okay, great, thank you. I see no more requests. We'll go to public comment.
Our first speaker is Mr. Ted Wiesma.
Welcome, Mr. Wiesma.
Thank you. Now that I've sat through 2.5 hours, I get 3 minutes to talk. That, I don't think, is a good workshop if you prevent the community to really have a fair amount of time to speak to all the issues that were brought up here. My number one issue is your slides. Print size makes it actually impossible for people out here in the audience to read them. Anytime you do this, you should have a packet that you guys have made available to the public as well, because it really makes it difficult for us out here. Item number 2, every time you get a new person under Measure Q, you're tying up those funds forever. So you keep cutting out any kind of flexibility in Measure Q if it's all going to pay for personnel. You keep hiring personnel, there's not going to be any money left over to do anything else in the Measure Q. So pay attention to that, please. Item number 3, I don't think in the past that you've been fair in your distribution of funds under Measure Q. I specifically need to let you know you probably have 3 times the number of seniors in this town than you have youth. Not that I'm cutting out that you should support youth, but you really, to be fair, need to cover 3 times more people that you have in this town. So you need to budget a little bit more for seniors. Now, one of the things seniors used to do is have travel. It was mismanaged, but however, the people in mismanagement are gone. So you need to put travel back on as one of the things that they can do with their funds. Number 4, fire. Number 1 problem seems to be pay. So make that a priority to increase pay for your fire people so you can get more EMTs, whatever is needed. 30% lower amount of pay is pretty significant. Okay, item number 4, that was it. Item number 5, don't cut our trees down unless they're a hazard. Like you said, they're historic, they've been there forever, they're serving their purpose. Don't just destroy them because you want to put a new little tree in. Also, we need to not have desert landscape. We need to have xeric landscapes where you're using low moisture plants, not just cactus. Okay, number 7. I would like to see neighborhood watch back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiesa.
Our next speaker is Mr. Mike Hernandez.
Welcome, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. I have to run. First of all, I would have liked to have seen this for everybody in the audience. The fire chief let me borrow it. It's his. And I was very disappointed when I saw some of the real thing I want to know is how much are we spending for the PD? How much are we spending for the fire department? How much are we spending for the youth? How much are we going to spend on the streets? I see here, oops, I lost it. Oh, here it is. On page 8, it says we're going to spend $2 million on streets. And 25, that hasn't even been approved yet. And it says 6.1 million for the fire department. Well, I know part of that is 1.57 is for the new engines. And when you come up with a cost factor of $13,721,000 for 25, well, you're $3,600,000 over budget. I don't see how we're going to keep on spending more money than we're taking in. Now, on, oops, where is it? Oh, page 19, it says that the fire gets $4,559,000. Oh, no. Well, it doesn't. It says $4,318,000, but that's not for the whole fiscal year because according to this, we have $9 million we'll be spending. And yet on page 8, it says we're spending $13 million. So it's a little convoluting. You're not actually telling the people the truth. Or not you, our finance director, the way she explains this. I better hurry up. Okay, my main point is, this is a joke. I thought a Measure Q meeting would be that we could discuss all items as they come up. We get to discuss everything at the end, and that's not right. We should be part of the conversation, not at the end, but during while it's being taken. So we could ask questions, but I guess that's the way you do things now. New council, new method. Keep people in the dark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
Our next speaker is Miss Virginia Brown.
Welcome, Mrs. Brown.
I wish I felt welcomed. I don't. This was a joke tonight. All of you spent almost 3 hours asking questions, 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 times. But you tell us we're concerned about your feelings, but you know what? We're going to discuss 5 different topics. All of them were explosively loaded with information. I alone had like 6 questions on each item. But then you tell me now, get all of those questions in 3 minutes. Oh, yeah, we spent hours asking our questions, getting what we wanted, but we're only going to let the public that we're supposed to be here to let them ask their questions and speak. We're only going to give you 3 minutes at the very end. You're very disrespectful to us because every time you, Mr. Silva, said, no, we're going to ask our questions now. But the public can't. We're going to make all of them go in 3 minutes. This is rude. It's disrespectful. We believed in you. I'm starting to lose faith that we've got the right people up here. Because if you said you were going to bring about change, and this is the change, that we're not allowed to ask the same amount of questions on the same subjects you have? Because I'll tell you what, I got 5 pages worth of questions because each one of these was important to me. But I'm told no. So I'm not going to waste my time trying to get in 1 or 2 questions about this or 1 or 2, because it would be a waste of my time to even address it when clearly you weren't interested in my questions, you weren't interested in what I thought, what I had to know, what I was concerned about. You were more concerned about what you wanted to know. That's why each of you got 2, 3, 4 times. Oh, yes, you're back in the, oh, you're in the key? Oh, okay, you go again and again and again. But public, we're going to give you 3 minutes at the end. Now, let's go ahead and have you ask a question. It's like giving me a 10-course meal and saying you got 3 minutes to eat it. That's sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown.
Our final speaker is Miss Anna Fusey.
Welcome, Ms. Fusey.
Well, thank you very much. Anna Fusey, Barstow Senior Center President. I've been with the Senior Center since 2016. Is that better? Thank you. So I do have to, I was a little disappointed. I thought it would be more of a workshop where it was talking about how to do Measure Q, how to fill out forms. But I do understand the purpose of the meeting today, so I'm good with that. Perhaps in the future we could have. I also wanted to clarify, the Senior Center is very active. We did a lot of trips last year. We did a lot of trips the year before. Thank you for sending Maribel today to talk to us. The one thing seniors like to do is trips and party, you know. And we did quite a few trips last year. A lot of it, for a lot of our seniors, is cost prohibitive because of, you know, some of the places are very expensive. You have to get a bus. You have to do all sorts of things prior to being able to have that trip. But we've had to cancel a few trips. So that Measure Q would certainly help us on that. We have a very active Senior Center, and I do appreciate being more visible on Channel 6 or other places. We take all of our information that we have to our membership meeting. We have about 450, and unfortunately maybe 20 show up, and that's a good meeting, to be honest with you. I kind of changed. I have tried to apply for Measure Q. It's a little confusing, so I feel like sitting Maribel has, you know, gotten us on the right step to being able to do that. I'm not sure the comment about trips being mismanaged. There seemed to be some confusion a couple years ago, but we are pretty self-sustaining. We don't have a lot of money, but the Senior Center, as long as I've been there, is pretty self-sustaining. We did take a hit, and I know it's a tired old saying, but COVID took care of, you know, a lot of us, you know, kind of, you know, the money situation and being more financially stable. So that is one of the things that happened with us at the Senior Center. So my question would be, how do we apply for Measure Q? I assume that Maribel, you know, would help us with that. I've not been able to find that necessarily online. I did ask Chief Espinoza when he was here, acting city manager, and I was directed to the community proposals, and I did fill those out for them, but I don't know what's happened with that as well. So just maybe have more of a hands-on workshop where we can ask some questions. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Fusey.
We have no more comment on this.
Okay, with that, we'll go to council comments. Mayor Pro Tem Rose.
Thank you. So I really do like the idea of having a workshop on how to apply for the Measure Q funds. You know, we've asked for other funds that are available to have those trainings, and this would be no different. So I'd like to see that, again, I was under the impression that the senior citizens board had been informed how to, but I'm hearing that they need the assistance. So maybe we can do a training on that, and even on our website, it could be the, you know, A to Z kind of, this is the steps, and if you miss a step, you can't move to the next step, so that, you know, once that page is complete, they move on to the next. Something to that effect, so that not only the senior citizens, but the youth sports also, or anybody that is eligible to apply for the Measure Q. And I would like to, you know, say that it's a town hall meeting where there's a difference between a town hall meeting and a workshop. And I think this council maybe need to revisit with our legal counsel on how we run this. You know, do we take the comments after each segment? We were allowed to do that, and that would, I don't know if we could do that. However, even
It'd be
as
up to the council, yeah.
Yes, even as a council member, I had a hard time, like there was 5 different pages and we had to go back to answer the question, you know, to ask the questions. So maybe streamline it a little different so that we get our questions out, but we also hear more from the public other than the 3 minutes. Our intent, but being called rude and disrespectful, you know, that's not the intent. We can all improve our processes. And this council should consider streamlining it better so that we get more engagement from the taxpayers, so that we can make sure that all voices are heard to that point anyways. And I do agree that if we are looking at a packet, that not only that the single agenda items are available to the general public, but they also are given the packet that, you know, we can't estimate how many are going to be in attendance, but a minimum, let's say, of 10 packets. If we need more, we can get somebody to run them. Because I know that when I used to sit in the seats, I had a hard time seeing what was on the screen. So I would like that as well. Thank you. Overall,
Thank you,
I just
Mary.
want to thank, I apologize. Overall, I just want to thank the staff for putting this together and for everybody here that were able to answer our questions. I really appreciate your efforts and time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I was going to suggest the same thing, that if we did this again, we could set up, I think we had 4 presentations, so we could set up 4 agenda items. This was set up as one agenda item. I ran this by the rules of order, and that's the end of it. Nothing disrespectful. The meeting was run by the rules of order. Thank you. With that, our open session, please show record ending at 8:32. You were in? Okay. Yes, go ahead. I didn't see you.
We did have workshops like that where it was a give and take for many years. And the agenda items were put out there. This would have been done in that manner. So I'm in full support that we have it. And if we have to break it down into more than one meeting, and so that the public, it was a give and take. It was an informal type process. It wasn't, and Mr. Mayor Silva, you were part of that. It was a give and take, and you know it worked. So I would appreciate if we truly would consider that, and we go back to that again. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Rose?
Just one for clarifying purposes, so that when we do have a workshop, after each item, that we would ask for public comment, but it would only be strict to the 3 minutes.
We didn't, those days we didn't.
But I would ask this council that we put the time limits of the 3 minutes after each item. It would be no different than our actual agenda meetings, because they could ask 3 minutes on this subject, 3 minutes on that subject. I just don't want to be here going back and forth and no time limits. And we should maybe even time limit ourselves on our questions. So, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else requesting to speak, we'll call the open session meeting over at 8:34 p.m. With that, we'll go into our closed session. We'll call it open at 8:34 p.m.
Do we need a motion? I motion to go into closed session? Do we know?
Yeah, motion to go in closed session, but first, there may be public comment on the closed session.
Right. Yes. Okay, so public comment, closed session. This is the time and place for a general public to address the governing board on matters on the closed session agenda and within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes or less. All requests to speak must be received prior to the agenda item being addressed. If special accommodations are required, a 48-hour notice must be given to the city clerk. Madam Clerk, do we have any requests to speak on the closed session items?
We do. Our first speaker is Mr. Ted Wiesma, speaking on items 3 and 4, which are item 3, the public employment, and item 4, the public employee appointment.
Welcome, Mr. Wiesma.
Thank you. Again, you've just put down titles, not really what the item is going to discuss. That, again, I'll have to say, is not very helpful to the public. Item number 3, you're talking about the interim city manager, public safety director, police chief. I assume you're talking about the interim one you have sitting up there right now. Hopefully that's what you're talking about. It's not clear. But in any case, I've said before, you shouldn't have all 3 of those titles for one person. The fire should be separate from the police, which should be separate from the safety officer or city manager. Item number 4, city manager title. Again, I'm not sure what it means, just says city manager. Hopefully you're going to announce the new city manager. Well, if we had 3 or 4 different meetings where you've gone into closed session and talked about the very same subjects, make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiesma.
Our next speaker is Ms. Marcia Wiesma, speaking also on items 3, public employment, and item 4, public employee appointment.
Welcome, Ms. Wiesma.
I'm going to get a rug burn over there. Okay, number 3 and 4. They're very confusing. You know what they did? They copied them over and over and over as we ask you for some clarification. But you know, I got 5 different agendas in 1 week. Boy, was that a mess. Okay, so we're here. This doesn't help us much. You got 3, 4 hats for, I believe Chris is wearing. My God, sit up straight, Chris. All those hats are going to push right down and squish you in the chair again. But it's very hard for one person to do everything. I think you better look into it and do not make the mistake of doing that again. Public comment number 4. I believe this is city manager. Okay, we've all learned our lesson from what happens when we cram too much on one person. But have you guys even thought about there are other staff members that left? There are other staff members that are currently working in the city, that they were part of this big problem besides your city manager. I'm asking you, council, please check your employee records and check into that, because I can tell you, and I've observed 3 people already, they're still employed. They worked for Mr. Mr. Espinoza, and gosh almighty, they're still there, and things are still happening. Look at your problem with the Humane Society. Woo, think we got it corrected? Maybe not, maybe so. But we do have some chiefs and they're still wearing the feathers. Indian chiefs in that city. You need to clean house. Mr. Mayor and all of you, I think you should really look into it at this time, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Westma.
Our next speaker is Mr. Mike Hernandez, speaking on item 2,
Welcome, Mr. Hernandez.
item 3, and item 4 as well.
My thing is, these items were on the last agenda, and you went into closed session after the meeting. You haven't made a solution yet. You haven't made up your mind what you're going to do. I see it's back on the agenda again. It'll probably be back on the agenda on the 18th. Are you ever going to make up your mind to report out what's going on in closed session? I thought you had to. If you go into closed session following meeting, you have to report out, even if you don't do anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez.
And our last speaker is Ms. Virginia Brown, also speaking on items 2, 3, and 4.
Welcome, Mrs. Brown.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. I appreciate that, Ms. Hernandez. And while I do understand it was all on one agenda, that's my point, is that you put a bunch of stuff under one title, and then the people are expected to come up here and talk about it in 3 minutes. They were 5 separate issues.
Mrs. Brown, I'll have to ask you to speak in
Okay.
the closed session. Thank you.
Now, I just want to say thank you guys for hearing me, okay? Thank you. I appreciate it. On item number 2, I'm like him. I keep seeing the same exact title, possible litigation, and they may or may not know. It starts to make us feel like you guys are in some kind of a lockdown back there, and I picture a wrestling match. You know, half of you are wrestling with the other half because we're not getting anywhere with any of this. When it comes to the chief, and now when I read it, I fully understand that he's the one who holds those 3 hats and has been holding them. So with this, we keep coming back, and it keeps being a discussion and a discussion and a discussion. I understand that it is a process. But if it's a process, let it do its thing. I don't know why you guys have to keep coming back and beating that horse, because it's confusing to the public. You keep going in, you keep coming out, you keep going in, and yet this continues to stay on this. Are we getting anywhere with it, or are we just going to continue to have meeting after meeting after meeting until maybe the public gets tired of it, we forget about it, and everything goes back to normal? Hey, everybody's one big happy family again. As for the public employment here, it says it's an appointment, and that's what you're discussing. Not that you have appointed, but that you are discussing an appointment. If this is the case, I am really excited and really happy to see where we go. Did we find someone? I don't care if it's male or female. Did we find someone? Is it maybe a current someone, which I wouldn't complain, Hildreth? Or have we found a new someone? But as a public person, I am really excited to hear at the report out at next meeting that we have in fact made a decision, and we have in fact decided to appoint someone to that position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown.
We have no more comment on this.
Okay, with that, I'll ask for a motion to go into closed session.
So moved to go into closed session.
Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Rose, a second by Councilmember Hernandez. I'll call for the vote. Or is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote.
Motion carries 5-0.
With that, we'll go into closed session. The closed session will be read out at the next open council meeting